Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I am Mark Lawrence, the Senate Chair of the committee, and true to our moniker, we've been having difficulties with technology this morning, but we think we have issues worked out. So we are having hearings today on 3 pieces of legislation. But before we begin, I just wanted to start off with a few preliminary matters. This is our first public hearing of the second regular session. And one of the transitions people will notice is that we have a new committee clerk and a new analyst for the committee. And I would like to bring them on first and ask Lindsay to come on a video just to introduce herself to the public. So we'll start off with Jason first. Jason, if you could just introduce yourself. Jason is the committee clerk.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm the new committee clerk with the EUT.
And whatever you do, don't call Jason Jacob, because I've been calling him that for about a day now. So his name is Jason. And then Lindsay, if you could just introduce yourselves. So.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Laxon. I am the new legislative analyst with the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis.
Great. And Lindsay is new to the legislature. She comes from the well-respected Bureau of Insurance. But she is new both to the committee and to the legislative process. So we do expect some kind of a learning curve here and understanding our procedures and process. And all of us on the committee are very used to how we operated with Deirdre and our prior committee clerks. So I just ask patience in giving them time to get up to speed and understanding the process. I'm now going to go around the virtual horseshoe and ask people to introduce themselves. And I will ask Senator Vitelli to put her title up before her name so that the public can see, as we are in the committee room, what our roles are. So I'll start off and ask my co-chair, Representative Berry, to introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Seth Berry, and I represent House District 55, which is Bowdoin-Bodenham, most of Richmond, and Swan Island on the still unfrozen Kennebec. Happy New Year. Good to be with you.
Great. And next, Representative Grahowski.
Good morning, all. Nicole Grahowski. I represent House District 132, the City of Ellsworth, Town of Trenton.
Great. And Representative Foster.
Good morning, I'm Steve Foster. I represent District 104, which includes the towns of Dexter, Charleston, Garland, Exeter, and Stetson.
And Representative Sachs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Sachs, and I represent House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell. Thanks.
And Representative Wadsworth.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Wadsworth, and I represent House District 70, 5 towns of Hiram, Porter, Brownfield, Freiburg, and Lovell.
And Representative Wadsworth is also the Republican House lead on the committee too as well. Senator Vitelli, have you had success in renaming yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I have not. I'm currently working on my phone, but as soon as I transfer to my computer, my name should appear as appropriate with my title there. So please bear with me. I'm having my own technical difficulties this morning. So I am Senator Eloise Vitelli. I represent Senate District 23, which is all of Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County. And pleased to be with you this morning in one way or another.
And Representative Ziegler.
It appears the alphabet rules again. I'm Paige Ziegler. I represent District 96 in Waldo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Mount Fillmore, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Great. And you all see, we'll see on your screen, we have a bottom box saying EUT committee room. This is the new way in which in the committee room itself, we have a screen that allows the Zoom to be seen from the committee room. And this is a new procedure we're dealing with and learning. So it's a learning process for the chairs and for the clerk and for our analyst. I'm just going to go over a couple of things regarding Zoom hearings and how we do things in committee. And this is our first public hearing. Representative Berry and I chose 3 of the quasi-municipal water and sewer district bills because we thought they were pretty Straightforward to start with before we got into complex issues that required longer hearing. The purpose of a public hearing is to invite testimony from the public, from members of the public regarding the proposed legislation that is pending before the committee. The committee is going to hear testimony from persons present, including those participating by phone, who wish to speak for or against, or neither for nor against the bills to be heard today. And we ask that you identify yourself when you get up, whether or not you're speaking for or against the bill. And if you are getting up neither for nor against, we ask that you truly testify neither for nor against the bill, and not try to get testimony either for nor against under that category. With leave of the chairs, committee members may ask questions of any person testifying today. The public is not allowed to ask questions of the people testifying today, and I just want to make that clear. Whether or not you testify, you may submit written testimony to the committee, and please be mindful that testimony is public and is available to all once it is presented. Written testimony will also be posted on the legislature's website for viewing by interested persons. Persons testifying at the public hearing today are advised that the hearing is being streamed on the internet and may be heard by persons listening online to that video stream. That video stream is also being recorded and will be archived in the legislature's webpage. If you wish to testify, please state your name and your residence and any organization, if you are representing one, that you're here to testify on behalf of. We're going to hear the testimony in the following orders. We'll hear first from the sponsor, followed by any co-sponsors. Then we'll hear from those speaking in favor of the bill, those speaking in opposition to the bill, and those speaking neither for nor against the bill. When we have hearings that there are a large volume of people to testify, that's not the case today, but when we do, we will alternate and probably spend a half an hour on proponents, a half an hour on opponents, and go back and forth again through the process. We usually have a limit of 3 minutes for people to testify, and we do try to stick to that rule, and we ask you to stick to that rule. Otherwise, people begin to lose focus on what you're saying. And if you want to expound beyond those 3 minutes, we ask you to do that in your written testimony. And believe it or not, the people on this committee actually do read the written testimony. They take it home, they spend a lot of time with it, and they'll often ask you questions on it about it later or get in touch with you later. So please do submit written testimony. Even if you're testifying, I'd encourage you to submit written testimony as well. When we're doing Zoom, I would just want you to understand it's different than us being in the committee, and there are some functional problems we deal with. All of us are dealing on multiple screens. I have 3 screens and a paper copy here going at the same time. So if you see people looking away or occasionally having to turn off their video, it doesn't mean they're disinterested in your subject matter. It means that we all are trying to accommodate this new way of conducting a public hearing. Also, you've noticed there are several people not here today. Members serve on multiple committees and they are presenting bills in multiple committees. When we do it on Zoom, they'll occasionally have 2 computers going and they'll switch over to another computer, and we ask that they stop the video and stop the audio on ours if they're participating in another committee. So you'll see people jumping in and out of committee hearings. It's not an indication that they're not interested in your bill. It's simply an indication that we all have multiple things to do today. With that, I'm going to start off with the first public hearing, and we're going to hold a public hearing on, we're taking the bills out of order as a courtesy to the sponsor of this bill. We're starting off with an act to repeal the St. Francis Water District Charter and direct the town of St. Francis to assume, maintain, and operate the property of the district. This is LD 1814, and I'm pleased to recognize the sponsor of the bill, President Jackson.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence, and Representative Barry, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I am State Senator Troy Jackson. I have the honor honor and privilege of serving Senate District 1 in Northern Maine and being the Senate President. I guess just a little bit off topic. One, I still owe you tribute for being a previous member of this committee, and I'll definitely try and make good on that. And also, I've enjoyed spending the morning with you, a little bit of humor, and I know that all the work that you did last session, some of the bills that I had, you guys were really quite good at the virtual aspect. You were pros. I'm sure just starting out this being the session, much like when we were doing it totally in person, those first couple meetings sometimes have some bumps, but I know that this committee more than any is going to have that taken care of. And I very much appreciate the opportunity today. I'm here today to present LD 1814, an act to repeal the St. Francis Water District Charter and direct the town of St. Francis to assume, maintain, and operate the property of the district. As we all know, water districts keep people and the environment healthy. Doing so requires substantial personal resources. Operating these vital utilities can be a tremendous strain on rural communities that struggle to maintain a functioning board. That's why I'm sponsoring this bill to repeal the St. Francis Water District and direct the town to assume the district's responsibilities. Consolidation will ensure that the water district can continue serving the people of St. Francis reliably. St. Francis is actually, like, I think of it as one of my hometowns. I grew up there. Went to elementary school there throughout. My dad lives there. The way that the community is, the heart of St. Francis on a high hill, and it was always challenging for the people that live in that area to get water because of the elevation. It just didn't, and so the school district, and they've had a water district there for a long time, and the one that they had previously was challenging. They had a lot of problems. I actually worked on it with my father and other people. And so the community actually came together and created a great water district in a different place. Karen, who's here to speak today, was part of that process. She's been like someone that's worked in the community. She's a lifelong resident. Her parents ran a general store there. She knows the community better than anyone. This is just a situation where, they do have a great water district, but they'd like the town to take it over, and I believe everyone's in support. So I'm going to pass it off to, I'll take questions, but obviously Karen knows more about it. And I'd also like to say, St. Francis is even more northerly than the town I come from, Allagash. And so she's 5 hours away. This system allows her to actually be able to testify on this bill today. Don't think she'd be able to drive down if not for this, because she has a full-time job. But anyways, I'll take questions and appreciate the committee's indulgence.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for President Jackson? Seeing none, thank you very much. And I don't believe, Jason, we have any co-sponsors who are interested in testifying. Is that true? Are there any among the
We do not.
Okay, great. So then we'll go on to our first proponent of the bill, and the chair is pleased to recognize Karen Jandro of the St. Francis Water District. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Karen Jandro, and I am the treasurer and one of the trustees of the St. Francis Water District. We are asking today to repeal the St. Francis Water District Charter and have the town of St. Francis assume the maintenance, care, and responsibilities of the water system. And the reasons that we have for this are, firstly, both the town and the water district will definitely benefit from economies of scale. Secondly, the water district needs people in charge that have more resources available to them than the current board of trustees has, for example, for grants and repairs and so on. The next benefit is accountability. This water district's board of trustees is really not accountable to anyone financially. We are a board of 3 members, and together we review the financial statements monthly. but we believe that these financials should be reviewed by others at the same time and using the same methods that the town's financials are reviewed. Lastly, looking ahead, we need to know that someone reliable is looking after this necessary water system. We are a town of an older population, and the people in charge need to have its best interests at heart. We only have about 30 to 35 customers, so you might think that only a small portion of the townspeople rely on this system, but in reality, most of the town relies on it. Our fire department, our housing facility, our post office, our church, our credit union, our town office and community center, they all rely on this water system. So it affects a huge portion of the townspeople. We believe that because of all this, that it is fitting for the town of St. Francis to be responsible for its water system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee for Ms. Jandro? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Jandro, for your testimony. I have two questions. First of all, and I think the answers are probably obvious, but I just want to confirm that. Are there any customers and or property owners or property that's owned by the water district that's outside of the town of St. Francis? And secondly, the Senate President mentioned the school district, and I'm wondering how that, if there are other towns involved, fits into this. Thank you.
We only supply water to a small portion of St. Francis, only St. Francis residents. And the school district, our school is now closed and it has become our community center. So that's where we have our town office, our library, and that's where they hold town's benefits and stuff whenever they, so there's really no school in St. Francis anymore.
Thank you.
And I understand after Senator Jackson going through the school, I understand that may have been a reason why it needed to be closed. Are there any other questions for Ms. Jandro? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is there anyone else interested in testifying in favor of this bill? Is there anyone else, is there anyone interested in testifying in opposition to this bill? Is there anyone who wishes to testify neither for nor against this bill? Seeing none, I'll declare the hearing closed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Jason will now go on to the bills in the regular order that they were listed. And I just need to draw up the next bill. And that will be, I'll now lay before the committee for a public hearing, LD 1760, an act to amend the charter of the Booth Bay Harbor Sewer District to set the terms of its trustees at 3 years. And Chair is pleased to recognize the sponsor of the bill, Representative Holly Stover.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning. Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and esteemed members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. I am Representative Holly Stover, and I proudly represent the towns of Booth Bay Harbor, Southport, Edgecombe, Westport Island, and part of South Bristol, and my own town of Booth Bay. I'm here today to speak on behalf of this bill. This bill provides needed updates to the charter of the Booth Bay Harbor Sewer District. It also attempts to correct an error that occurred in the 2019 amendment of the Booth Bay Harbor Sewer District's private and special law, when the terms of office of the district trustees was omitted inadvertently. This amendment applies retroactively to the date when the law became effective, September 19th, 2019, to clarify that the terms of office of a trustee who was elected this year is 3 years. The Booth Bay Harbor Sewer District's charter currently is composed of 8 private and special laws and 1 resolve enacted over the last 70 years, and is overridden in part by several mandatory provisions of the Standard Sewer District Enabling Act. Also, while the district's territory has been expanded during that period to include the town of Boothbay, provisions for the representation of the town of Boothbay and for election of trustees have not been amended to reflect that expansion. Therefore, this bill is a codification of the 8 private and special laws and resolve an incorporation of the relevant Standard Act provisions and an adjustment of representation and election provisions in one private and special law so that the district may be more readily able to manage its affairs. This bill creates the ability to bring the charter amendment to the voters of Boothbay Harbor for approval of the changes. Once passed by the Maine State Legislature, this bill will take effect when approved only for the purpose of permitting the submission to voters of the Boothbay Harbor Sewer District at the election to be held on November 8th, 2022. Thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Stover. Are there questions from members of the committee for Representative Stover? Representative Stover, do you know if Senator Maxman wants to testify or not?
I do not. I believe there may be the superintendent of the sewer district, Chris Higgins, may be here, or the attorney for the sewer district, Jim Katziafikis. I'm sorry if I've said his name incorrectly. I tripped over.
That was just a trick by me to get you to pronounce it first, so I don't look as bad.
Jim, we'll call him Jim.
Yeah, yeah. So I assume Senator Maxman is not going to testify. Representative Grochowski, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if you can answer it, but I think we want to put a pin in it, perhaps for analysts. You stated that the amendment was retroactive to September 19th, 2019, but I feel like what I'm seeing is November 5th, 2019 in the actual written language of the bill.
I'm not sure. I think we need to clarify that. You know, in 2019, we brought this before the legislature and you passed it and we thought we were all set. And then when we, in this year, looked back, the language that was presented and passed didn't get transferred in completely. So this is to correct that omission. And the November 8th deadline is to bring it back to the voters once it's passed so that the voters will enact it. The retroactivity date, I guess I'm not sure whether that goes back to September 19th, 2019, when it became effective, or November 5th, 2019, when we would have had that vote. But the vote wouldn't have mattered. We're still back to the September 19th, 2019, because we didn't get the full amendment the last time. So I think, I don't know if that makes sense, and I'm probably confusing it, and Jim may be. But
I think it's okay if we can just address it if the next testimony does, or we can just make sure we check in on it in the the work session with our analysts, what the right actual date is to use there.
This is more of a fix. It's a fix to 2019 than anything else. But thank you.
Thank you. And we have some Katziafikis is how we say it in Ellsworth, so that might help Senator Lawrence.
Thank you. Thank you for that lesson.
Might be different though.
As usual, you have given me a new thought experiment, so I appreciate it, Representative Grochowski. Any other questions for Representative Stover? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now go on to proponents of the bill, and the chair will now recognize James Katziafikis of the Bar Harbor, representing the Bar Harbor Sewer District. I assume, Jim, you're the attorney for the district. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay. And to present testimony. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you. Chair Lawrence, Chair Barry, members of the committee. My name is Jim Katziafikis. And in southern Maine, we pronounce it Katziafikis instead of Katziafikis. And it's the Ellsworth clan. I can't explain. But they are distant relatives. And so I'm here representing Boothbay Harbor Sewer District with regard to and in support of this LD 1760. Chris Higgins, the superintendent, is not going to be able to speak today because he's very busy with fixing a chlorine mixer that went south this morning. So he has some bigger duties to handle right now, but he's listening in as we go on. back when Chris had a question for me.
Jim, if I could
Right.
interrupt for 1 second,
Certainly.
there is a problem with your audio. I don't know if everybody else is experiencing that, but it
I'm
seems to be
sorry.
vibrating. I don't know if it's something on your end, but if you want to take a minute to fix it, I think it'll help us follow you much more easily.
I apologize. Thank you.
Here, that's it. You've got it.
Okay, I'll stand right here. I'm sorry I'm so close in the visual screen, but if it works, we won't question it.
That's better.
All right, great. Thank you. Back whenever the superintendent would have a question for me about something under the charter, I would have to look at, as was noted, 8 separate private and special acts, a resolve, and then the Standard Sewer Enabling Act, which has some provisions that override whatever's in the charter. That became pretty wonky to try to do, frankly, and pretty difficult and time consuming. And so we approached the legislature back in 2019, 2018, with the idea of putting it all in one place, which this committee and its committee assistant worked with the district, and it was wonderful. The problem is that when things happen quickly at the very end of the session to prepare that for enactment, one term was left out, the term for the trustees, which had always been 3 years. And so this is a straightforward, I believe, amendment to just restore that term back to 3 years, put that language back in. Now, whenever a charter like this is amended, it then goes to referendum vote by the town or by the district. And so what happened here is, although this law became effective back in 2019 in September, to answer the representative's question, it became effective in September of 2019, but it would only apply and become fully effective when approved by a referendum, and that happened November of 2019. I will be glad to work with the committee assistant to see which the better date is, but the idea here is to make it legal for those trustees who have been elected since 2019. They know they were elected for 3-year terms. That's what we advertised, but it would be nice to make sure that it went back to 2019. And again, I'll be glad to work with the committee assistant to get the right retroactive date to ensure that happens smoothly. That's basically it. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Jim? So just from a scheduling standpoint, Jim, and I haven't had a chance to discuss this with Representative Berry, but I don't think we're going to work this bill today. I think we're going to set it off for another day because these sound like really technical issues. And we want to make sure that we have the chance for our analysts, our legal analysts for the committee to weigh in and work through those bills. But if you could work with Lindsay and kind of walk through, we want to make sure that this time we get it exactly right.
Understood. Be glad to work with Lindsay on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents who wish to testify in favor of this bill? Seeing none, are there any opponents who wish to testify in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to testify neither for nor against this bill? Seeing none, I'll declare the hearing closed. Representative Berry, are you able to join back in with us? I think he may have jumped off to his next hearing. And I see we have 3 Steve Hudsons joining us. The next bill is Representative Berry. Are you able to conduct the hearing? Because this is my bill to present. So I've got to go off video and change my face to be a sponsor instead of a chair.
I sure am. And sorry, I had to duck over to attend to another matter briefly. So with that, the chair will open the hearing for LD 1829. We'll begin with the sponsor and then proceed to testimony in favor. And Senator Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mark Lawrence, the state senator from Southern York County. And Ogunquit is one of the towns in my district. And I, like other members of the committee, have many islands in my district, but I'm not going to brag about them because I don't think Ogunquit has any, or if they do, they're very close to the coast. Ogunquit is a beautiful community. It's a very small community, but it is a very important community in our area. And the sewer district is also very important. It is a tourist hub. And one of the things I like to explain about my district is my district has a population of 35 year round, and it goes up to about 75,000, 35,000 year round, 75,000. And the town of Ogunquit is a town that goes from 1,000, less than 1,000 in population, up to 12,000 in the summer. So they have many unique needs, but they are here to present a modification or a change to the Ogunquit Sewer District Charter. And rather than getting into the technical details, I'm going to ask that you reserve those questions for the attorney for the sewer district, who's going to come on, and representatives of the sewer district to talk about what they're trying to accomplish in this amendment to their charter. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very well, thank you. Any questions from the committee for the sponsor? Okay, Senator Lawrence, thank you. And I believe there may be a co-sponsor wishing to speak to this. If we could please promote Representative Patricia Hymanson, that would be great. And meanwhile, if others preparing to testify are named as Stephen Hudson, I would ask that if that is not in fact your name, that you rename yourself, and we will get to you shortly. Representative Hymanson, welcome. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm not listed as a co-sponsor, but because Ogunquit is in my territory, I thought I would come in and listen, really, so I can take back any information that I need to. So I'm Patty Hymanson. I represent District 4, which is parts of York, Wells, Sanford, and all of Ogunquit. And Senator Lawrence did a good job in describing the importance of water in Ogunquit, which is on the ocean and is currently speaking about sea level rise. And so the desalination or the salination of its water supply is on many people's minds. So the importance of keeping the water district in good working order is very important. So to this end, I reviewed the bill language, and I reached out to members of the budget committee who reached out to the town manager. And I received a letter from Heath Olette, who's the chairman of the Ogunquit Select Board. And that letter was copied to the chairs. And I imagine you all have that letter as well. I know the chairs do. And really, it was a letter to support the enactment of this bill, and mentioned that the only significant change, there was really a housekeeping bill, which you'll hear about from the town's lawyer, with the most significant change would be an increase in the debt limit, which was already subject to a referendum that was approved in November of 2021 at a special town meeting and was approved by the voters. So I wanted to bring that to you. So I'm here to listen and learn, take back any comments to the town of Ogunquit Sewer District and to the town itself.
Great. Thank you, Representative Hymanson. Terrific. Any questions for Representative Hymanson? Seeing none, we appreciate your joining us, and our clerk will port you back over to the attendee panel so you can continue to observe. Up next, and in the panelist box is Phil Pickering. Mr. Pickering, welcome, and we look forward to your testimony at this time. And you are muted. So we'll just ask you to unmute yourself, and then you can go ahead and deliver your testimony when you're ready.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, and it looks like Mr. Pickering is unmuted. Mr. Mr. Hudson,
Yes, thank you.
you want to go first?
Yes, I had talked with the committee clerk yesterday. In the interest of respecting the committee's time, I was going to offer some testimony and explanation. We have some materials that walk the committee through the changes we hope will be helpful to the analyst in her analysis of the bill. And then with me today, I have Bill Sawyer, who's the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the district, as well as Phil Pickering, who is the superintendent of the district. They're not going to offer testimony, but they're going to be available to answer questions, and we will all attend the work session. So if I may be permitted to go ahead, I'll be glad.
Yep, that's fine. I had the three of you signed up to testify, and we can certainly do it that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, and members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology, and Happy New Year. My name is Stephen Hudson. I'm an attorney with Pretty Flaherty. I'm here today on behalf of the Ogunquit Sewer District and its Board of Trustees, speaking in support of LD 1829. As I mentioned, I'm joined today by Bill Sawyer and Phil Pickering, representatives of the district. The district was formed originally by legislative charter in 1963 as a quasi-municipal corporation for the purposes under which it is now operated for 60 years, or nearly 60 years. It is managed by a board of 3 elected trustees, elected in an annual election held in conjunction with the town of Ogunquit's annual election. Today, the district owns, operates, and maintains 12 pump stations, approximately 20 miles of sewer lines, and a wastewater treatment plant. Since the original charter, the district charter has been amended on a number of occasions to comport with updates to the laws governing sewer districts and to reflect improvements in practices for sewer districts in Maine. The last set of changes to the district's charter was enacted in 2012. Now, 10 years later, we're back to ask for the legislature to approve more updates and improvements to the charter. We are seeking to bring the charter into conformance with the 2014 Standard Sewer District Enabling Act. We also, as Senator Lawrence and Representative Hymanson mentioned, are asking to have the revised charter approved so they can reflect an increase in the district's debt limit from $7 million to $12 million. This increase was approved by a referendum of the voters in the district, which was held on November 2nd, 2021. So I have attached to my testimony a summary of the changes to the charter proposed by LD 1829. We're happy to go through those today if the committee would like, or at the work session if you have any questions. Finally, we've attached a copy of the letter from the select board of the town of Ogunquit to our testimony, which also should be in front of you. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on this proposed legislation. Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Pickering, and I are happy to answer any questions, and we'll also attend the work session, and we ask you to vote opt to pass on LD 1829. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there questions from the committee for either Mr. Hudson or Mr. Pickering or Mr. Sawyer? Representative Grahowski.
Thank you so much. I don't know if it's just me, but if it would be possible to email that whole package of files to our clerk, maybe to send to us. What I see when I look online is that it says there's a lot of PDFs within a PDF and you can't see them. I don't know if anyone else is having that problem, but it looks like maybe I didn't get or missed the material somehow.
That may have been the way I packaged them. Because I had a PDF of the town letter, and I created a PDF of our testimony as well as a summary of the changes to the existing charter, and then I packaged the PDF together. And so when you open the PDF, what you should see is 2 PDFs that are in the same opening, and but we can send it directly to Jason. I apologize, I didn't realize it would be difficult for members to open.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And that's a great reminder to always just check online. Once you have submitted your written testimony, it should, within a day, post to the legislature's page where all files related to the bill are kept. That becomes part of the legislative record. So it's good to check there and make sure your testimony came through as you intended. Any other questions for Mr. Hudson, Mr. Pickering, or Mr. Sawyer? Okay, very well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And Jason will move you back over to attendee where you can continue to listen. I am not aware of any other testimony, so just a final all call. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this bill?
We have one other person in attendees currently.
Yes, Mr. Lanfear is with the Public Utilities Commission, and I don't see his hand, so
Okay, thank you.
I know he will know how to raise it if he wishes to testify, but I believe he's here for other purposes. So seeing no other testimony on this bill, that will conclude the public hearing. And we will move on to a break, I believe. We're not scheduled to hear the reports from the Public Utilities Commission until 11. And I do want to make sure that we give folks a chance to take a little break. We may be able to start a little early if it's okay by the Public Utilities Commission and others. We like to try to keep to our advertised times. But Senator Lawrence, how do you want to proceed?
Yeah, I think you're right, Representative Barry. We should probably take a break now. And why don't you all check back in about 10:15? We can send out a group text. It looks like we're getting back on. As you know, Deirdre, our prior analyst, has gone to work for the PUC. And so we now have the irony where Lindsay is reaching out to Deirdre asking, can you come early to our committee, when normally Deirdre would have done that a year ago. But we're seeing if we can start a little bit early, so to get us concluded for today. And I don't think, Seth, that any of the bills this morning we want to work. We want to set that to another day for work session.
Agreed.
So with that, why don't we break till 10:15 and check back in at 10:15, and we can give you an update on when the PUC will be here. Remember to mute yourself and turn off Welcome back. We are coming back online with the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. And we have been able to expedite to a certain degree the PUC's presentation to us. So that'll allow us for either more time for questions or more ability to get done earlier today. So that's really up to the committee's discretion on how you want to handle it. Lindsay, if you could come on, if you're there.
Yes.
Yeah. So you spoke with Deirdre. The PUC is ready to present. And if you could just tell the committee what they said about the order they could present in.
Certainly, I believe the Public Utilities Commission wishes to start with the GEA report.
Okay. So is it someone in particular from the PUC who's going to be presenting the GEA's report?
Yes, this will be Chairman Bartlett and Harry Lamphere.
Okay. And are they both in the attendees?
It appears, yes.
I only see, oops, I only see Steve Hudson in there now. Have we promoted them over?
I just promoted them over. Yes, I did.
Thank you very much, Jason. So we are still working out the coordination between Jason and Lindsay and Seth and I, and Jason and Lindsay seem to be much more coordinated than Seth and I today. So we're going to allow them to lead. So we do welcome to this report presentation before the EUT committee, the chairman of the PUC, Phil Bartlett. Phil, why don't you begin with your report?
Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to let Harry do the sort of nuts and bolts of the presentation of the report, and then we'll be here to assist in answering questions. So I would happily turn over to him.
Okay, Harry, if you're prepared to go forward, why don't you go forward?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. This is a 40-page report, as you know. So I'm going to try to go through it in 10 or 15 minutes. I hope that's okay. And then we'll have lots of time for Q&A. So Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, members of the committee, I'm Harry Lamphere. I'm the Administrative Director at the Public Utilities Commission, and happy to be here. We spent a lot of time on this report, so I hope you get a chance to look at it carefully. So I'm going to focus most of my comments on the description of programs and the emerging issues. So if you look at the actual GEA requirements, there are, I think, about 15 requirements talking about our organizational structure, our finances, how we coordinate with state and federal agencies, how we use information management, just a variety of areas in this 40-page document. I thought, trying to put myself in your chair, that it would be maybe most helpful to focus on kind of the programs and how we deliver those programs. So that's what I thought the focus would be, but obviously we will entertain any question you have, and we can speak to any aspect of this report. So in addition to that, because one of the GEA requirements talks about emerging issues, we elaborated on that a bit. So in section 1 of the report, we kind of put in some additional, hopefully helpful context regarding what we would consider to be kind of trends you should be aware of and future challenges. So that's in addition to the actual GEA requirements, but we thought it would be helpful to the committee. So that's on page 3 of the report. And really there were 5 areas we focused on, which is future electricity costs, kind of the upward challenges we have there with costs rising, grid modernization, net energy billing, the aging water infrastructure, and the 911 crisis report that we've been spending a lot of time on. So just with respect to that, real quickly, I think future electricity costs, the upward pressure there, I think you're all aware of the challenges. We've got the investments in the grid. Obviously, the standard offer went up dramatically, and that clearly has a cost implication that people, I think, will probably struggle with. You've got transmission investments being made by New England and Maine that'll have, cost pressures. And then, we've talked about distributed energy resources and kind of the implications there in the context of energy billing. Phil presented that in December, so I think you're all aware of that. Regarding grid modernization, that is a significant effort as well. We've hired a consultant who is really doing great work. We're very pleased with their work. So the findings will be coming out in a few months, but we're pleased with the steps they've taken. And I think you may have seen in the press, maybe not. We received a grant from the Department of Energy. We haven't asked for a grant on the regulatory side of the house for a while. We've received a few in the 911 area, but this was really an interesting opportunity. And I guess I would just say our staff is obviously, to me and Phil, and hopefully you folks, our staff is very good and just exceptional, very smart people, talented. That being said, for us to, with a relatively small staff, 65 people in total, for us to stay on top of all the emerging technology to make sure the grid operates reliably and safely and can handle the distributed generation projects that are being built, that is something that is a challenge for us. So we have great engineers, but there's just not enough time to follow these emerging technologies, and that's one of the areas that we think the Department of Energy will really help us. They have the technical expertise. They're going to look at what other states are doing, and we plan to leverage that as much as we possibly can. So we're looking forward to that. That work, we have a kickoff meeting in February, so we're not exactly sure how it's all going to work, but we know it's going to be very helpful to us. The other couple quick points on kind of the industry trends. The aging water infrastructure in Maine is definitely a challenge. We put it in our annual report for many, many years, and the numbers have stayed about the same, but Maine has about 1.3 billion with a B dollars of infrastructure that is aged and needs to be replaced. That's a daunting number. And I know, a lot of these water utilities are small, and when they do those kinds of projects, prices go up, and that's a challenge. Who wants to be the trustee that votes to have a big increase to replace the water main going down the heart of any small town? So, there's an issue there, and there are grants and other opportunities, but that's something that we're watching closely. And then the 911 area, I know you're aware, we're working on that, the crisis report, the crisis protocols that you asked us to look into. So that's a key focus for the 911 area. So that's kind of section one. The other part we wanted to touch on real briefly was just the fact that, and Phil can maybe elaborate at the end here, but I know all of our staff take our regulatory responsibility very seriously. We try to have fun occasionally too, but we are very serious about our work. And we look very carefully at everything. Utilities have to deliver, safe, reliable, reasonably priced services, and we hold them to that and hold them accountable as best we can. I've given several examples here in the report that you'll see. I think I'm on page 8 and 9 now, if you want to look in detail at some of those examples. But we have several investigations going on right now, as you probably know. We've got a couple with CMP, and we've got several others. But if we need to go deep on a utility, we do. And again, we take that responsibility very seriously. The other thing I just wanted to mention is, a lot of the work we do is rate cases. And in every single rate case, we look at all utility costs very carefully, and only the prudent costs do we allow. So just to give you one quick example of that, Unitil, which is the largest gas company in Maine, they replaced their customer information system, and the cost of that was $38 million. So that was a very big number. And at the end of the case, the commission could not find that 38 million was prudent. So we are investigating that further, and we will make a final determination of how much of that should be included in rates and what shouldn't. So that's just kind of a specific example of the kind of work we do. We also investigated 3 CEPs, and we actually fined one $500,000 for some poor performance. And so again, just a couple examples of how we hold utilities accountable. And then finally in that area, we have a section on how we assist consumers. Derek Davidson and company and our consumer assistance staff are really good. And as you could maybe guess, the phones are starting to ring with people seeing their bills starting to reflect standard offer. And we expected that and anticipated that. And we do whatever we can to help educate customers on what their options are, as well as helping provide assistance, financial assistance, to make sure they know where those resources are and helping them get to those resources if they need financial support. So that's kind of the section 1 of the report that again was an addition on our part to hopefully be helpful to you as you think about your work this session and going forward. The next section I would talk about is the description of programs section, which starts on page 11. And basically, this is the section on goals and objectives. And so it's broken out by program. So starting with the regulatory program, again, on page 11, our goal again is safe, reliable, adequate utility services at rates that are reasonable to customers and the utilities. And then there are 4 objectives underneath that first goal. And I won't go through all of those, but I would say this, that as far as our case work, last year we had about 350 cases the utilities bring to us for a decision. Could be a rate increase, could be as I mentioned earlier, water infrastructure replacement, could be capital investments utilities want to make, could be financing. When the utility brings a financing to us, we review that and evaluate that. This year, that was 2020, we had 350 cases. This year we have 400. 2021 ended with 400 cases, I think 401 maybe. So 50 more cases, maybe doesn't sound like a lot. It's a lot. It's a significant increase. So our work level is way up, and we're managing it. But I will say it's certainly a challenge having a case volume that high. So again, I won't elaborate on all the objectives. I certainly could, but there are 4, and one focuses around kind of our casework. The other focuses around how we work on safety and reliability. The reliability, again, the grid modernization project, I would say one aspect of that consultant's work is to look at cost-effective ways in which we can ensure safety and help ensure reliability of the grid. We're looking at service metrics, as I think you know. From a safety standpoint, we have our gas safety team and our dig safe team. They are quite frankly exceptional. We receive perfect scores from the federal government in that area, and they are busy 24/7. It seems like there's something going on from either a dig safe issue or a gas safety issue. So anyway, our safety folks are really good. We spend a lot of time on legislative work. That's objective 3, making sure that we're following the policies and following your directives to us. Again, we take that very seriously. We've never missed a deadline, and we never will, as far as I'm concerned. So right now, I think we're working on 9 reports to the committee. I'll do it by February 15th. So you're gonna see a lot of reports coming your way, and There's a lot of good work by a lot of our staff on those reports. I think you'll be impressed. And then the final one is kind of, again, on the customer assistance side. I think we're up to 9 staff there that full-time, completely devoted to helping consumers. And again, we're very good at it. And we get great feedback from customers who call us up. A lot of those are just plain questions. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? Of course, we also address complaints. If there's a formal complaint about a utility, we address that very thoroughly and make a final decision on whatever the customer issue brought to us is. So that's that section. There's a second goal in that area, and this is new, as I think you know. So that goal is around greenhouse gas, and that's new to us. We're looking through every aspect of what we do to get at that. That public law became effective at October 18th, and how we achieve the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction levels. We've given a couple examples in the report, but again, we're just kind of starting our work there. Certainly RGGI is a big component of that. And then I would say also our renewable solicitations directed by you folks. Those 2 solicitations were, again, very, very effective. The prices came in 3 to 4 cents first year prices. So it's very cost effective, and those projects are projected to reduce emissions by, 760,000 tons per year. So that's the beauty of the renewable solicitations. There is a goal also in the moving to the 911 area, Emergency Services Communication Bureau. They have 1 goal and 3 objectives. I guess I would just say briefly that that area is very efficient, very effective. We don't, just to maybe elaborate a bit, obviously we don't answer the calls. We kind of have the backbone of the system to make sure the calls get to the right place. We have a significant contract with Consolidated Communications. We just refreshed all the servers and technology back in the January of 21. So that's been completely refreshed, and the system is operating very effectively. We do, there are 24 PSAPs in Maine, and we do audit them every year, every single PSAP, and look at how they're meeting their federal and state requirements, making sure they're answering calls promptly, making sure they're staffed promptly, et cetera. So we do focus on that a fair amount. We also provide significant training resources to the call takers. That's another thing we do in the 911 area. And obviously that training is critical to help those folks answer the calls effectively and go through the various protocols they need to go through to get the first responders to help. So that's really, that section, again, that's pages 11 through I think 23 of the report, talking about all of our programs. So I'll take a little bit of a breath there, and then we section J is the emerging issue section. That's on page 31, and that's a requirement of the GEA. And again, that's an area where I thought you would have an interest. A lot of the things that I talked about in section 1, the industry trends and future challenges, some of those are reiterated in the emerging issues section. So I'll touch on a couple that I haven't spoken about yet. So utility mergers and acquisitions, we would expect, there's been a fair amount of that over the past several years. We would expect more of that. So that's kind of an emerging issue. Grid modernization, I talked about. Extreme weather events is another area of focus. There's all kinds of work being done. Our national association called NARUC, the National Association of Regular. They have a task force on severe weather events in conjunction with state commissions. Phil can maybe elaborate on that. I know he's involved. Obviously, we have experienced, one of the things we have experienced and spent a fair amount of time on is drought. Drought has in fact impacted several utilities, and some of them are mentioned in the report: Stonington, Dover, Foxcroft, South Berwick. So we implemented some emergency changes to our rules, allowing utilities that get in trouble with wherever they're getting their water resources to be able to take some quick conservation measures without our approval. If a utility has to do that, they need to act quickly, obviously. And so we wanted to make sure those rules are in place to allow them to do what they need to do to get water to their consumers. The last thing that I guess I would just note, even though I've talked about it, section O of the report just lists the reports we're required to provide to you. And I think there's 21 of them right now, and you'll see 9 in the next 30 days. So again, we track those requirements, and I'm thankful to have Deirdre here joining us, and I apologize for stealing her, for lack of a better word. You can blame that on me if you need to, but she's great. She did great work for you, and she's going to do great work here. So we're thrilled to have her. But again, those reports, we won't miss a deadline in any of those, and there's a lot of them. We spend a fair amount of time tracking and doing dockets, getting feedback from stakeholders to make sure that we provide you with good information on all those reports. So that is those 9 reports are what we're doing the next month or so. So I would stop there. I hope I haven't gone too long. Again, Phil and I certainly are happy to answer any aspect of this report in any way. And Phil, I don't know if you want to chime in at this point, but we're certainly happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
I don't have a lot that I'm happy to answer your questions. I think one point I think that's worth making is that we are incredibly busy. We are stretched incredibly thin. We are, as part of the last legislature, you authorized additional positions. We've been hiring those. The legislation didn't take effect until October. So we're sort of just completing a lot of that hiring as we speak. They're bringing these folks on to help us. We don't expect a real light up in the workload. Obviously, we think the demands of climate change and the response to it are going to be immense. And we expect to see additional requirements from all of you for very good reasons that we'll be implementing. We also see just a lot of activity within the utilities. It seems like every year we have at least 1 or 2 big rate cases we're dealing with, mergers and acquisitions that are happening. And then sort of there's the traditional investigatory work, which I think is probably at a heightened level and has been for a while because of, I think, a lot of the change that's going on and the transition the industry is going to have to make, and also the issues we've seen with different ownership of the utilities. So that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Bartlett and Mr. Lampier. Before we go into that, I was off screen because I'm following through the report that we have right here and we're able to see it. And I don't believe we posted it to our committee page. So because we're doing so many things on Zoom right now and we don't have physical copies available for the public, if you could, Harry, just direct the public who may be watching where exactly on the PUC website they can find the report that we're looking at.
Sure, happy to do that. So if you go to, I'll do it live here. If you go to our homepage, which, and again, I think we mentioned it in our report that we completely revamped our website. If you go to our homepage, there's a section called Legislative Laws, Rules, and Activities.
So why don't you give that site
to
your homepage so the public can hear?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, maine.gov/MPUC. Yep, www.maine.gov/MPUC. And under the legislative tab, the very first tab underneath that is reports to the legislature, and they can find it right there.
Okay, good. So I think it's important as we go forward in these getting the reports to the committee that members of the public be able to see what we're seeing as we're seeing it. I do want to comment at this point, we're not going to have public comments or public questions on your report, but we do invite the public to submit written comments to the committee This is not a public hearing. This is simply us hearing a report from an government organization on something they're required to usually report back on, or something we're specially asking a public government agency to report to us on. So we will often get these reports, and I'm going to see if there's a way we can create some kind of link on the EUT page to get to the reports. But members of the public, it's not a public hearing. We don't allow questions or comments. We will allow committee to ask questions, but we don't discourage comments on these reports. In fact, we encourage them. So if you have written commentary you want to do on the report, please submit it to the committee and we will review it. So I'll ask at this point if anyone on the committee has a question for either Chairman Bartlett or Mr. Lanfear, specifically regarding this GEA report. And just so people know what a GEA report means, it's the Government Evaluation Act. There's a Government Evaluation Act that requires different organizations to report back to committees of jurisdiction on operations within their agency. Representative Berry, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chairman Bartlett and Director Lanfear, for being here today and for putting this report together. It's very helpful, and I look forward to a little bit of dialogue on it now as well. And yes, we are very upset with you for stealing our committee analyst, but we'll try to get over that. The first question I have is just about the role of the commission more broadly. I think it's useful. You know, we have at least one new member. We have new staff on the committee. If you could just speak to the role of the commission with respect to our utilities, and to what extent that is judicial or quasi-judicial, kind of just calling balls and strikes and hearing from both sides, the public advocate, the utilities, and serving as the judge and jury. To what extent it is investigative or a kind of a police function where you actually take the initiative to investigate and even to sort of prosecute, if you will. Which is obviously a different role from the one I just described, and then also the legislative role that you carry out with respect to making rules and filling in the blanks that we leave in statute. So either one of you could just speak to that. That would be great.
Sure. I mean, I think it's sort of an all of the above. We have sort of a variety of different roles as a quasi judicial agency. So we have both executive branch functions and more adjudicatory functions. With respect to the legislature, we are obviously trying to provide sort of advice, our expertise, input to you as you're considering legislation. And then we're taking and implementing specific laws that you pass. Sometimes that's in the form of a procurement. Often it's in the form of rulemakings to sort of set the rules of the road that the utilities are required to follow. And those rulemaking functions are very similar to what any other agency would do in terms of usually we start with an inquiry to sort of gather some information. The staff works on a proposed rule that goes out for comment and a hearing, and then ultimately the commission decides the final rule. We have a sort of quasi-legislative function, which is the rate making. We do certainly follow due process considerations as we work through those rate cases, but rate making is a legislative function. You could set rates yourself. That has traditionally in Maine and most states been delegated to the commission to do the deep dive into the evidence. And when we're doing those rate cases, we have a staff of analysts and lawyers that are really looking under the hood of what the utilities bring forward, asking a lot of tough questions, comparing numbers. Utilities never get precisely what they ask for. There's usually millions of dollars in reduction that staff find with input from the public advocate and others. So that's, I think, those rate cases are when a lot of the work around the prudency reviews, determining whether utilities are making wise decisions as they're making big spending decisions, and also looking at their plans going forward with things like reliability, vegetation management, and some of the storm response, those kinds of things to sort of really look at what the utilities are planning going forward in terms of staffing and contracting, all of that. We also retain consultants as necessary to assist. So if there's any areas that are outside our expertise, that's where we would bring in consultants. We also do have an investigatory function. If a complaint comes into us or on our own motion, our own decision, we can do what's usually called a summary investigation, which is an initial gathering of facts from the utilities, from public advocate, from the public, to get a sense of what's going on and then make a decision whether to do a full-blown investigation. Those are adjudicatory proceedings once you get into the full investigation, because there are consequences and fines that can come along with it. We also do that in terms of enforcement actions when we see violation of gas safety rules and the like. So that is when we are probably sitting in our most judicial role. We also can do investigations or inquiries that are not sort of in that enforcement posture, but are looking at the future. The grid modernization proceeding is an example of that. We saw a lot of changes coming down the pike and open this proceeding to get a better understanding, with the help of consultants with electrical engineering expertise, of what's going to be needed to transform the grid. So I think that's a sampling sort of the range of the things we do. Happy to answer questions on anything more specific, but it really does run a very broad range, from being very sort of supporting policy implementation to very court-like proceedings.
Great, thank you. And I do have some follow-up questions, Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair.
Representative Barry. Yep.
You touched on staff and the workload, a fair amount in this report, but could you just remind us, engineers and finance folks strike me as being incredibly important, and I'm wondering, how many of each do you have on staff at this time?
Across departments, I couldn't tell you exactly, but we have a handful of engineers and a number of financial analysts. But it's a fairly lean analytical team, to be sure, that work on these rate cases and dig into the meat of our other case proceedings.
Director Lanfear, do you have any other comment?
No, I think right now we have, 10 to 12 lawyers, and some of those lawyers, as you might guess, have some financial expertise as well, which is helpful, or policy expertise, whether it's environmental, energy, et cetera. And then on the analyst side, we probably have another like 14 people that are, specifically analysts devoted to cases. Some of those are engineers, some of those are financial, some are economists. And just to give you a flavor, if it's a small case, we maybe would have one lawyer and a couple analysts. A major rate case would have, I would say, 2 to 4 lawyers, depending on the case, and probably 5 to 7 analysts. Because of the volume of work, you just need a team of close to 10 on a large rate case.
Got it. The reason I ask about engineers and finance people is that in looking for prudence, in reviewing for prudence, in reviewing whether the assets of a utility are in fact used and useful, it strikes me that finance and engineering are paramount. So I would love to have a little more specificity on the number of people qualified in those two areas. And that can be for a follow-up later on.
Yeah, we can get you the precise numbers. We just are, like I said, completing some hiring, so we can get you the precise numbers on that. And I do think it's the other thing that's really important is that when there is something that we think is outside our expertise, or where additional expertise is needed, we do retain consultants, and we sort of always have that option. And obviously the parties will bring us evidence as well, but we don't sort of if we have any question, we're going to find a way to get to the bottom of it and get the requisite expertise. But we do, I think we don't have, what we don't have are electrical engineers, a lot of electrical engineers. They're hard to find. And we would love to have some additional electrical engineering expertise. And I think that's an area where, in the grid modernization proceeding, we went out and got it because we think it's important, and we'll assess going forward the role that consultants need to play if we don't have permanent staff in those positions with that expertise.
I guess I would just add one more thing. Page 23 of the report does give you an org chart that will certainly give you a sense of staffing in each of. We've added a few people, so we'll send you an update.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you,
Let me pause my questions, Mr. Chair, and see if anyone else wants to jump in.
Any further questions, Representative Barry?
I do, if no one else has any.
I do not see any, but why don't you go ahead? Representative Foster has some questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lampier, in your report, you mentioned, and we all know from past hearings and issues brought up before the committee, that the water utilities, especially in my part of the state, rural Maine, are facing continued loss of larger customers such as businesses and employers, as well as residential customers, to help share the load, which bears the financial brunt of repairs and upkeep, that those costs, which are always increasing. I'm wondering, just to give us an idea of, you mentioned the Bingham Water District was a recent utility that the commission helped out with, who had a financial situation. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of detail, just as an example of what a lot of our utilities in rural Maine, at least, are probably facing or will face ahead, and how you handle that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Our water staff, I will say, is if you look at that page I referred you to, our water staff is small. I mean, we have 4 people dedicated to the water and telephone area, and a couple of them in particular spend a lot of time on the phone helping out these small utilities. A lot of these utilities are run by volunteer trustees, and a lot of those folks are great, and they're all volunteers. But they do have to make decisions. They do have to decide, okay, they have to look at cash flow. They have to look at their finances. They have to make sure that the bills go out so they can collect money. And of course, there are times when they have to come to us. And I will tell you, and I'm actually proud of this, we for the smaller utilities, we really do hold their hand and help them through our process, because there are times when, as Phil said, we're adjudicatory. It's like a court, and some of those smaller entities just are not used to that, and we are happy to help them because they need to be financially stable. I mean, you're exactly right, Representative. There are cost challenges when you lose customers, and you have fixed costs and fixed expenses. So there are cost challenges there, for sure. But on the other hand, we want to make sure they stay solvent, and we've helped utilities in that regard with financial issues like that. So I don't know if that answered your question in enough detail, but basically we help them a lot with a variety of matters, and we're happy to do it.
I would just add that a lot of these utilities have maybe one employee, and sometimes half an employee. So they are sort of trying to do everything, including the regulatory filings that the staff that helps with. We do have an aging infrastructure. I think there's millions and millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure needs to support our continued delivery of water through these utilities. And it is a challenge. And I think one of the serious questions that that you all need to think about going forward is whether to encourage some additional consolidation that may benefit utilities by sharing staff by being able to have a bigger base of revenue in order to take advantage of just the work that needs to be done to determine what infrastructure upgrades are needed, and then to put together the grants and applications and get the supporting engineering, all the things that you need in order to even put free dollars to use. So I think that's going to be a very important question. We've been dealing with drought over the years, and that's another place where the staff over the last couple of years has worked very, very hard with utilities who are struggling, serving as a sounding board and trying to offer support as they're making some very difficult decisions when they're faced with the potential of not having water to serve their customers.
Any follow-up, Representative Foster?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess I would be interested in knowing a little bit of detail on, for instance, from how you've answered this, I assume you offered some technical expertise that they did not have on staff or could not afford to get. You may also have, for instance, found ways that they could apply for grants or whatever that they did not have the personnel who would have that knowledge on how to do that. That's the kind of thing I was looking for, is what types of things does the PUC do for these smaller districts that may only have one person handling things, or a very small board of volunteers with limited expertise? That's kind of what I was wondering, is what areas is it that the PUC can provide in a little more detail?
I would say that one of the challenges in grants, because I've thought of that too, wouldn't it be great if we could sort of be the shop where folks could go? But a lot of it does require, some independent engineering or other work to determine what the solution is. And when you're looking at a staff of one person or a very limited revenue flow, it can be very difficult to put that together. So I think the problem around sort of grants and getting money infused into these utilities is a lot more difficult than what we're likely to be able to provide to most utilities. We can direct them to kind of where they can go and the types of things that they will need in order to pursue those types of opportunities. But ultimately, I think it's going to take a lot more than what our limited staff would be able to provide.
Any further follow-up, Representative Foster?
No, thank you.
Harry and Phil, while we're on the subject of these small utilities, I see your division is titled Telephone and Water Division. Do you have, and I do not remember, do you have no jurisdiction over sewer districts, or does that fall under that division?
We do not.
We do not. That's correct. Okay, thanks. Other questions for either Chairman Bartlett or Mr. Lanfear? Representative Grochowski.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here. Wouldn't be the start of a session without a visit from the PUC, so I appreciate your time. I wanted to say that I have been really appreciative of the Consumer Assistance and Safety Division helping me with some complaints. We are experiencing in the Versant region, what I'm hearing about is a lot of billing issues that hadn't happened before for customers, and he's been really helpful. Derek has been in trying to track down those for me. What I have a question about is the ways in which the PUC gets information from a utility to verify whether they're meeting their service quality metrics that are required, and if there are ways that constituents can help point areas of concern out to you all so that you can ensure that the utilities are accurately providing the information to you to determine whether or not they are in compliance or in violation of their requirements. What underlies this question is that I understand from the division that it is up to the utility to provide the information saying we're doing a great job or we're not doing a great job, and that you can go and investigate further. But what you're looking at is their reports of what was an okay bill or not an okay bill situation. And I worry that if the utility doesn't properly tell you that it was an inappropriate billing situation, that you would have no way of knowing that. So I'm wondering if there are things I should direct constituents to do in terms of official reporting to you all around the issues that they're experiencing, so that you can maybe double check that what the utilities report is actually matching with what the constituents are experiencing. And if you have any advice maybe more broadly as well as what we can tell people who contact us when they're having problems to do, so that it's an official filing or report with you all, as opposed to just, us casually emailing and getting it sorted out for them. I want to make sure that they're in the system and that the quality assurance checks can be based on that. So any advice you can give and information around that would be helpful.
When we get a referral from the legislature, we do follow up with that customer, and it does get into our complaint system. So we are tracking those kinds of problems. In terms of the broader SQIs, the service quality indices, the utilities in the first instance are providing the data, and then we are analyzing it. The Office of Public Advocate is engaged in that review as well. And we can do a deep dive if we're concerned about any metric or are just unclear as to any of the numbers or any of the supporting documentation. We will and do dig much deeper. It's also important to recognize that for us, the Consumer Assistance Division really is the front line, and they're often identifying problems. If you go back to CMP's billing and metering issues, it was the Consumer Assistance Division that first started getting a lot of complaints and raised that to the commissioner level and started the summary investigation. So, before it kind of blew up in the media even, the Consumer Assistance Division was aware that there was a problem and had begun the initial work of trying to figure out what was happening. So to the extent customers are having issues, they should call. We do go into the billing system. We can see the specific documentation for the customers. The calls are recorded. We can and do go listen to those recordings when necessary. So we can follow up and get information from the individual folks, even who are providing the service, if necessary. So I think the Consumer Assistance Division does an excellent job of really drilling down to understand if there's a billing issue or billing concern. They're not going to rest until they're fully satisfied that the customer was properly billed.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Representative Grochowski?
Yes, I really appreciate that. The one question that I have that's a follow-up is, and I can't recall, and it's probably different for different utilities, but does something like the customer paid their bill and it was never appropriately, recognized, even though the check was cash, et cetera, does that count as a billing issue? It feels to me like it's part of the billing universe, but there's nothing wrong with the way the bill was initially distributed, but I suppose the next bill was wrong when they got a late charge, et cetera. So is that part of that universe?
My guess is that second bill would count as a billing error, but I would have to go back to Derek, our Director of Consumer Assistance and Safety Division, who is the guru on all those numbers. And sometimes it is not quite as intuitive as I think it is. So we can check with him.
Any further follow-up, Representative Grochowski? Okay. Any other questions? Other questions from the committee? Representative Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You touched on the management oversight and audit capacity, and I know of at least one summary investigation that you've had going in that general area. You mentioned as well, Director Lanphier, the increase that you see going forward in mergers and acquisitions in the industry. So I just wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit more on that, and in particular, a question that I have is, to what extent does the commission historically and going forward under the current commission anticipate requiring that the parent, the ultimate parent of the acquiring corporation, not necessarily the intermediate holding company, but the ultimate parent in a merger or acquisition or any future regulatory proceeding that they may be directly or indirectly a party to make sure that they are in fact called before the commission, required to deliver sworn testimony, to be subject to cross-examination, regulated, not just the local company that they own, but the folks who are in fact making the decisions based on what we know about share ownership?
I'd let Harry talk about any trends that he's seeing, but let me just say that during the review of a merger acquisition is an important opportunity to assess the parents' commitments that they're making to the company, and also to make sure that the company is protected. A lot of what we are trying to do is ensure that we are minimizing the risk to main customers, and there's adequate ring fencing, for example, so that a parent can't come and just start pulling cash out of a utility to the detriment of customers. So there are a lot of it's a lot of risk management when you get into a specific merger and acquisition. Our jurisdiction, once that deal is complete, is over the company. It's over the T&D company itself, not the parent, except to the extent that they are obviously providing services to the utility or engaging in specific activities with the utility. So it is true that the parents of these companies are routinely before us. So when we're dealing with a rate case or investigation, we expect and usually do see representatives of both the parent company and the local company before us. One of the things we're certainly looking at currently with CMP, we'd had coming out of the billing and metering issue and the rate case at the time, we ordered a management audit. We have opened an investigation into the results, having received a preliminary report. We are open an investigation to dig deeper and to figure out how CMP is going to respond to that. And a lot of that has to do, and a lot of the concerns that have been raised in that go to the level of the parent. And it is for sure a challenge, and is one that we will be wrestling with in that particular case. So I don't want to say too much, but I think that's an area where there is concerns have been raised that the very management structure of the parent is having negative impacts on the company itself. And so figure out how to get at that, because we have, we can certainly subpoena witnesses and require them to come in and provide sworn testimony. But that's a little different than having sort of direct regulatory jurisdiction over that parent. And so I think it is one we are definitely wrestling in with this context. And with any merger and acquisition, we understand that the conditions and the promises that get made are really important because that is the opportunity for us to have an enforcement mechanism against the parent company once those commitments have been made.
Thank you. Any further follow-up, Representative Berry?
Yeah. So I just want to understand, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to understand that in slightly more detail. So the example that you gave was with respect to one of our T&Ds. This could easily happen in water or gas as well. In fact, it has happened in I think in both of those instances. So in the case of Central Maine Power, just as an example, you have an intermediate holding company, Avangrid, and 18.5% of its shares are traded publicly, but it is wholly controlled by Iberdrola, based in Barcelona. So how often do executives from the controlling company, Iberdrola, appear before the commission, whether virtually or in person?
Rarely. It is the holding company.
It's Avangrid, and yeah.
Any further follow-up, Representative Berry?
Thank you. Yes. Moving to service quality standards, which you also touched upon. I appreciate that work. You're developing those. I commend the commission on doing so. I think it's it's important, and obviously we have a lot riding on our utilities going forward. The question of fitness to serve is one that has come up a little bit, and I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on whether you see service quality indices leading us towards a future where the commission actually has minimum standards and can say, we not only have the power under current statute to decide that a utility is unfit, but we can say what fitness looks like. We have minimum standards. Do you see that happening in the near future?
Yes, I mean, I think that the SQIs are a good way of measuring whether the utility is providing safe, adequate, and reliable service. We've had metrics like SAIDI and CAFE for years as measures of reliability. If you consistently saw a utility way underperforming on those metrics, that would be an indication, even long before now, that there's a reliability problem and they're not providing the reliable service. So I think they have various measures of reliability and service quality have been used over the years, including in Maine. And what we're trying to do, I think, is to round those out, to try to be more complete, address more parts of the utilities operation, including places where we know changes are coming. Looking at things like storm restoration, which have not, traditionally been carved out of reliability measures. So yeah, I mean, I think if a utility is consistently underperforming in those metrics, that is an indicator that they may not be fit to serve. So I want to be careful. I'm not here to set a clear line or a standard today. We do that through commission proceedings, but absolutely, they would be indicators of fitness.
Any further follow-up, Representative Barry?
Yes, I just want to turn briefly to transparency and accessibility. I know that those are things that we all value a great deal in government. And your work is so important, and because of its technical nature, sometimes esoteric nature, both the topic and also the methods that are traditionally used to make decisions can be hard for the average person to sort of participate and do so knowledgeably. So I just want to give you the opportunity to speak to transparency and accessibility. I know you've done some work on the website. Perhaps you want to highlight that. I'm particularly interested in the importance of that as we look to a future where consumers are also producers and maybe have even more at stake in your decisions.
So I think transparency and accessibility are both incredibly important. And I think, as I've said to this committee before, I view transparency as a lot more than simply the public being able to walk in and see what we do, right? So we've made a number of efforts. We have a communications staff member now who is helping to get information out, whether it's through social media, through traditional press releases, and otherwise, to help inform the public of what we do. The website is another example of trying to overhaul it and make it more user-friendly, more accessible. Our proceedings are live, can be live streamed, which I think is incredibly important for folks to be able to pay attention and follow along what we're doing. I do think it is highly technical in nature. And so I don't think it's reasonable to expect that the average member of the public is going to be able to come into the commission and meaningfully participate in proceeding. It happens from time to time that individuals will intervene, but they do in many cases struggle. I mean, our staff, our hearing examiners work very hard to ensure that they have an equal opportunity to be heard and ask questions and those things. But it's a technical form. It's like going into a court without a lawyer and expecting great results, and it's a challenge. So I would say, one, that's why the Office of Public Advocate, I think, is incredibly important, and they need to have the resources they need to get the consulting help and to be active in major proceedings before us. We're also looking at, it has long been the case that interveners can seek to get costs of experts and consultants paid for through the case. So if you have a rate case, they could request consulting. And then the standard has traditionally been, have they offered useful information over the course of that proceeding that would justify them being paid. We are currently looking at whether we could front load that and provide more opportunities for organizations who may be representing particular interests of the public, sectors of the public, to be able to come in and request those money up front so that it wouldn't be waiting out the case. They wouldn't have to front any money. That would provide a much more meaningful way, I think, for public through various activist groups, NGOs, to be able to participate in particular ways that are important to their membership. So that is one area we are currently looking at and are open to other suggestions on how to make it more accessible. I think the answer is not just having lots of public participation in these very complicated proceedings, in part because we have time limits on a lot of them. So if you have 9 months to do a rate case, there's a limit to how many detours you can take along the way. A far better effort, I think, is to make sure that there are the public advocate or others who can step in and provide the expertise needed to represent those very legitimate interests of the public.
Further follow-up, Representative Barry?
No, I'll just conclude by saying I appreciate that last thought a great deal. I've been concerned about asymmetry, as you know, for quite a while, and we do pay for the utilities to participate in regulatory proceedings. So having some additional funding for citizen interveners and others makes a lot of sense. So thank you.
Any further questions on the PUC's GEA report? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the net energy billing portion of the report, a couple of questions. First would be, it mentions that the PUC anticipates there may be a far greater than 750 megawatts of generation becoming operational. I'm wondering if you have any number that you could give us when you say far greater than, and also, well, I'll let you go with that one, and then I'll ask the next. Thanks.
We don't know. I mean, what we know is that, you know, a lot of these folks are still in the game, right? And there's a lot of money on the table that's going to provide every incentive for these projects to go. So I think the real limitations are going to be if there are permitting problems or the technical capabilities of the grid, right? So if some of these cluster studies are coming back with very expensive upgrades, then that's going to limit the number of projects that can go. So we don't know what that is. I would be shocked if it was under 1,000 megawatts, but it's anyone's guess at this point exactly what's going to proceed. So we are all waiting and watching, and I think that's the challenge, is that none of us really know what these rate impacts are going to be, and we don't know what the tariff rate and the delivery rates are going to be, you know, a year, 2 years from now, when a lot of these projects are going online. So I think that's I think the concern that we have and are wrestling with. We currently have a number of good cause exceptions that have been filed pursuant to the statute that would allow folks to get in, even though certain deadlines have been missed. And we'll be going. The staff has been working on those and holding technical conferences. We expect them to reach the commission level for decision in the next few weeks. So that might give you some indication of how these projects are faring.
And I'm guessing, Representative Foster, you have a follow-up or
I do. On net energy billing, another question. The chart that you provided in your report, I think, is now, as you say here, one that you initially gave to the committee some time ago now, and I think you even may have by email provided us something of an update to that. What I'm wondering is, I think, and this is not entirely tied to the report, but I think in one of our fall committee meetings that we had, I think I requested an update on projected net energy billing in cost increases based on projects that the PUC has received and accepted a bid price from, and those that are already operational. In other words, an up-to-date, if you will, estimate based on what good information you may have as far as, and again, I don't fully understand at what point, if a project comes in and you accept a bid price from them, but obviously they are not yet anywhere near operational, at what point you can estimate what the cost will be to ratepayers. But I'm wondering if that might be something we could get from you, kind of an update, if you will, on what you do know. Thank you.
Yep. I think we probably could, and we can look to see if there's an update. I mean, there's two types of projects. There's the projects that we're procuring. Those we have a pretty good indication based on the bid prices, and those, the variability there is because often the bid price has an escalator over time, so that may have come into play. But for those, we have a really good sense of what it's going to cost. We just don't know for sure when they're going to become operational. We have the dates that have been given as part of the contract of when they're expected to be operational, but we don't, that's not 100% certain. But I would say for those procurements, we have pretty solid numbers and a pretty solid sense of the timing when those are going to be hitting rates, if they do. On the energy billing side, because those projects are just, we don't have any real approval of them. Once they become operational, they're operational. And for the C&I program where they're getting a tariff rate, whatever the tariff rate is that's in place, when they start to become operational, they will get paid. And that is updated every single year. What we know is that that is likely to ratchet up over time, but we don't know with any certainty what that tariff rate is going to be year 1 to 20. So and I think whenever we've provided information, we've tried to make clear that these are really rough estimates based on what we're seeing. But until they become operational, it is very, very difficult to make that kind of assessment. So we can provide you an update based on where things stand today. And I expect towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, we'll see a lot more projects becoming operational.
Thank you.
Is there a follow-up, Representative Foster, other than net energy billing? Okay. Other questions for the PUC on their GEA report? Okay, we're going to leave this for the moment and move on to the next report to be presented by the PUC, and that is their report on metering and billing. And this report, for the purpose of the public, is also available on their website, the same place that you would locate the other report. It's just above it. This report was issued on 11/30 of 2021, and the reports appear on their list chronologically. So you want to look for the one that says 11/30, 2021 metering and billing. And I'll let who from the PUC wants to proceed with that? Jason, who do we have to talk to us about that?
We have Mitch Tannenbaum and Angela Monroe, who
Okay.
I've just brought in.
So I see Angela. I don't see Mitch yet.
Oh. I have promoted him. There. You should see him now.
So Mitch, do you want to start off, or do you want Angela to start off? How do you want to do it?
Angela will start off with a basic overview of the report.
Okay, good. So Angela, why don't you start off with with an overview of the metering and billing report?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lawrence and Chair Barry. It's great to see so many familiar faces again, as well as a few new. As said, my name is Angela Monroe. I'm currently a Deputy Director of the Electric and Gas Division with the PUC, and have been asked to give you a high-level overview of this report that relates to some of the questions I think that you were asking earlier as to the status of the billing and metering systems and the capabilities for the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities in the state. So as part of the legislation that did a number of things back in 2019, which was the Act to Promote Solar Energy Projects and Distributed Generation in the state of Maine, which was LD 1711 for those of you who are recollect that particular legislation. The commission, as part of that, was requested to and directed to provide a report to the committee on the status of the metering and billing capabilities for the investor-owned utilities, and that's the report we'll be talking about this morning. So in order to inform itself of the information that it would need to be able to populate that report, the commission opened an inquiry and got information from the utilities as well as any other interested parties that wanted to file information. The Act had some pretty specific areas that it directed the commission to address as part of that report. And as you might imagine, some of these areas were very in-depth and detailed. So what I'm going to go over today is really just a high level of those and then try to answer questions if you have them afterwards. The first area that the Act asked was for the Commission to report on the capabilities of the utilities systems to reliably offer time differentiated rates for delivery and supply. And I'll separate those rather specifically because they're not the same. Their capabilities are different depending on whether you're talking about delivery or supply. The report noted that both CMP and Versant can offer time differentiated rates, and they do. They have a number of different rate schedules that are time differentiated, but there are currently limitations on which time of use periods, the flexibility of those time of use periods, I would say. Both utilities, CMP and Versant, are working to address those limits in flexibility. CMP is working to be able to come up with they refer to it as an over-the-air system of updating their meters to allow changes in the time differentiated periods. And Versant is in the process of developing an entirely new AMI system. So as part of that new AMI system should have those additional capabilities. The Act also required the Commission to report on the ability of the meters to address bidirectional flow for customers that had distributed generation net energy billing, shorthand. The report noted that both utilities can measure inflow and outflow separately, but there were some variations in the configurations of how they did it, but there didn't seem to be any limitations other than they approached it a little differently. And Versant requires specific meters that are capable. I think it is expected that when they have their new AMI system, their AMI meters will be able to perform that function as well. The Act asked the Commission to report on the degree to which the systems are being used to address the smart grid policies that were identified in 35A, section 3143. And that section included a number of smart grid function areas for goals that I won't get into in detail here, but they're in the report if you want to know more about what the specific goals were. The Commission's report in this instance found that CMP's current system and Versant's future system will be able to address a number of those areas, but in order to get the full capabilities, that's really something that's going to emerge over time, and it's going to also require some analysis of the cost and benefits for each of those functions. So that's something that will develop as we go. And as I'm sure you are aware, given the the massive changes that we're seeing in the industry now, this is a very dynamic situation with new capabilities and functions coming along all the time and being investigated by the utilities as whether it's something they should or should not add. The report also noted that in CMP's service territory, all of the customers that have AMI meters do have access to their hourly information through some portal. Depending on the type of customer and the type of meter that the customer has, their method of accessing it or the particular program that they use to access it might be different, but they all have that capability. Versant does not yet have that capability, but expects to when it has its new AMI system in place. Another reporting item of the Act was for the Commission to address its confidence in the billing and metering systems of the utilities. And so in our report, we provided, I would say, several different places that the commission looked to assess its confidence. The first one, which no doubt many of you are aware of and was already discussed today, was the investigation into CMP's billing and metering issues and concerns. The commission did an extensive investigation into that, including a forensic audit of those systems, which it concluded in February 2020 that there were several contributing factors to things that were giving rise to concerns about billing problems, but that there was in fact no evidence of a pervasive or system-wide metering and billing problem. So that's one item that the report cites to note confidence. Also in 2020, the commission put into place some new billing and metering quality metrics. They had a little bit different for CMP and Versant. For both utilities, they have to have a bill error rate of less than 4%. And then for CMP, they have to have a read versus estimated bill rate of less than 1%. And currently, I think the commission has only received one report on that so far, but both of the utilities exceeded those standards so far. And then the commission also has another pending proceeding to consider whether it should address or implement additional metrics of performance, which could include billing and metering capabilities. And so that is an ongoing investigation at this point. And then the last thing that the legislation asked or directed the commission to report on was any changes to rates or other systems that the commission would recommend for changes. And in the report, it goes over that the commission is currently considering a number of targeted rates and rate design issues, as well as what has already been mentioned today, the grid modernization investigation. And we'll continue to look at what changes should be made as a result of those investigations, what new technologies are available, how those will be wrapped into the grid, and we'll make recommendations sort of on a going forward basis about any time that we find that either the billing and metering system is not adequately capturing or functioning in a way that's necessary for the goals that are developed as part of those proceedings. So that's a pretty, I think, high level and quick run through the report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. You're muted, Senator Lawrence.
Sorry, Angela. That is quite a bit to report on, and that is quite a bit to cover. And knowing our committee, there will be probably several questions. So I appreciate patience. And just for the committee's information, I think we're scheduled to go up to 1 o'clock today. So please keep that in mind when you ask your questions. So questions from the committee for Angela. You guys are amazing me. You're not asking any questions. That's fine. Oh, Representative Barry.
Surprise, surprise. I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Monroe, great to see you. Mr. Tannenbaum as well. Look forward to discussing this in a little more detail today. I want to ask a few questions about some of the specifics of the report that begin on page 3. First of all, it's clarified for us, and this is very helpful and a little surprising to me, that hourly interval data is available for supply, but not for delivery. And, I look at the meter outside of my home and it records kilowatt hours in. It's not separating out supply from delivery, right? That gets separated out later. So how does it come to pass that our utilities need to go and visit every single meter as stated in the report? And ratepayers have to pay for that, by the way, if we want to have hourly or even every 15-minute interval data so that we can move forward with time of use, more sophisticated time of use pricing signals.
So I can't give you a full answer as to how that has come to pass. I can tell you my suspicion. I think that obviously the meters are capable and do report hourly data, even down to residential. And my understanding is that I think the meters themselves have capability of reporting even more often than that. But the way that they are currently configured, they report to the head-end system the hourly information for customers, residential customers. And my understanding is that there is at least one in CMP service territory that is one supplier who is interested in billing on an hourly basis. So I can't say today, although we'd be happy to try to get some more information on this, at what point it was determined to build in that functionality into the system. And again, the customers the systems do allow for billing different time of use periods for the T&D portion. It's just that it has to be within the pre-existing time of use periods. So the time of use periods that are already in existence.
Right. So just to put a finer point on it, I'm looking at page 3, and it says for delivery rates, not supply, but for some reason deliveries differently, the system can only bill based on the current time of use periods, those established for CMP's territory presently, unless CMP physically visits and resets each meter or reconfigures its meter data management system. So, and obviously we would need, ratepayers would need to pick up the tab for that activity. That's where my question arose.
I think it's a good question. And it's not one that we know the answer as to how that happened, that there is a bifurcation in the capabilities of the systems. As I said earlier, CMP is working on a fix to it, and we could get more information about how far along that fix is, because my understanding based on their comments is that if they had that fix in place, that would no longer be a problem for them. And again, Versant isn't in a position to, when they have their new AMI system, hopefully that they will build that flexibility in. But we can get back with more information on that if it would be helpful.
Thank you. It would. I think this is a very important topic as we look ahead to more sophisticated and efficient market signals for resources that will be both produced and consumed by users of the system. So thank you. And I would hope that we can get down to at least a 15-minute interval, not an hourly interval. I think we should aspire to, at the very least, 15 minutes. I'll move along for the sake of time and ask about the replacement schedule for AMI systems. I know it was about 10 years ago, I think, that both utilities received a hefty slug of federal taxpayer money, and also complemented that with money that we're paying for in rates now for the AMI systems. At the time, there was a lot of discussion about how it would allow us to move forward with time of use, which we don't seem to have done in quite the way that was hoped for. and then we would save money. Does the commission have any specifics on how much money, have the promised savings been realized? I think it was, it was certainly a bold vision for the savings that we would see from these AMI systems. And now that we're talking about replacing them and incurring new expenses in Versant's territory, at least for AMI systems, what has been their track record? Have we saved money or not? And if not, why not?
So I don't think, as far as I'm aware, and Mitch can pipe up if he knows something about this that I don't. But as far as I'm aware, we've not looked at that particular question, at least recently. I know that in a CMP rate case some time ago, we did look at what savings there were for purposes of the distribution function of the utility system.
No, I was just going to add, my memory, which is fading rapidly, is that the federal incentive money that was provided 10 or more years ago was just to CMP and it wasn't to Versant, which is why CMP's system is in place now and Versant is in the process of moving in that direction. I think the savings had to do with a couple different things. One was, the cost of having to send a meter reader out to every account compared to having the AMI system, which automatically provides the metering data, so you don't have to do that. So there's savings there. There are also benefits regarding, storm restorations and being able to know better where the outages are as a result of having the AMI system in place. That might be hard to put an exact savings on, but there certainly is savings there, as well as the meter readering. But the TOU part of it is, yes, they do have an expanded ability to offer time of use rates over the last 10 years that Versant hasn't because of the AMI meters. And of course, there's benefits there, but hard to quantify savings. If that's helpful.
Mitch and Angela, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second because we do have a couple of new members of the committee. We have a new analyst and things, and there are members of the public. I'm just going to ask you to explain what the AMI system is and what AMI means.
So sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
So AMI is an automated metering infrastructure system, which, as I'm sure everybody who's not currently under 18 will remember, at one point not too long ago, the utilities, in order to read meters, had to take a truck and drive to every single location and physically read the meter individually. And with the advent of AMI, which there's various vintages of capabilities, the utilities had the ability to obtain the meter reads remotely and other functionalities like Mitch was talking about with respect to outage management information that they could gather. The three utilities have had different vintages of AMI meters, and sometimes it's also referred to as AMR, which is automated metering. I'm not sure I can remember the R, but it really is the difference between a meter that can provide information but really doesn't have a lot of two-way communication ability as compared to a meter that really has some two-way capabilities and can feed into the billing system and the metering system. The Maine Public District a small district up in northern Maine, has probably the most basic version of meters, and smart meters that are not, I would say, very smart, because they can send information one way but not the other way. And Versant was, I would say, an early adopter before CMP of going with a smarter meter, and they have a different communication network. They use power line carrier technology, which is actually using the electric lines to move the data back and forth, which had probably some advantages at the time, but ultimately has, with new technology requirements, is relatively slow, and I would say more like dial-up than it is DSL. And then CMP has currently the more modern system with a mesh network of communications, and all those meters feed into the communication systems of the utility of CMP, and then feed up to their head-end system, which then parses out the data to various technological platforms, such as the billing and metering platform and or outage management platform. So that's sort of a high level description of
and I appreciate that. It's just, we have a lot of people watching and maybe are not as technical, and I'm certainly one of the least technical people. So if I can summarize what you're talking about in AMI for new people and people listening, AMI systems refer to a variety of different meters. And this was a transition that came, I don't remember when it was, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, that instead of having the passive reading where somebody went out, we now had utilities be able to monitor remotely what was going on in your house, and electric use and things like that. I remember it being very controversial at that time. People could opt in or opt out, and I guess everybody has opted in. And if my recollection serves correctly, it's these meters that led to some of the billing problems that later occurred, these new types of meters. Is that not correct?
It's not quite correct, I would say. So one of the things that it's been a learning process as we've gone. One of the things that there's an important distinction between the meters themselves and the billing system that uses the data. So CMP, when they rolled out their AMI meters, my recollection was the implementation went quite smoothly. There really wasn't much for problems. There were a few instances where people's garage doors would open when they shouldn't have because of interference with the meters and a few things like that. And there definitely was a lot of controversy about the safety of the EMF associated with those meters. But the meters themselves, at that time, there wasn't a lot of real problems. The problems came when CMP implemented a new billing system that would use the data from those new meters, which was much later. The meters, I think, were installed in, say, starting in 2012, maybe. And then the billing system went live, I think, in 2017. And that's when—
And I appreciate that distinction, and that shows my lack of technical background. When I refer to the metering system, I wasn't just referring to the physical meters themselves, but you're saying the problems that ran into were the software associated to read the data coming in from the billing system. And I guess my point was, it's all part of a chain because you needed those meters first before you could get the billing system. And it's this conversion from passive reading to kind of active interaction between the utilities and your home that the billing issues came out of.
That's right. It was the implementation of the billing system to use the new meters that was implicated.
I apologize for the interruption. I just wanted to clarify for people on the committee what AMI is and kind of the significance of AMI as we go forward. I didn't mean to interrupt too much, Representative Berry, so you can go ahead with your questions.
That's great. Thank you. No, and I think that was a very helpful background, actually. And just at the, to build on that a little bit, at the top of page 5 of the report that we're all looking at, there is a very helpful summary of why we are moving forward with AMI. And this is state policy since 2009. The Smart Grid Policy Act at the time enacted those goals that you see enumerated on page 5, that it is the policy of the state to use the smart grid for increased information, reliability, security, efficiency of the electricity system, deployment and integration of renewable capacity resources, demand side resources and efficiency, demand response, real-time automated interactive technologies that optimize the operation of appliances and devices. You know, this is 12 years ago, and it was a very I think it was a very visionary statement, which you still hear in this day and age, regulators and other utility experts working on and talking about how do we move forward, plug-in electric and hybrid electric vehicles, timely energy consumption information and control options, identification and elimination of barriers. All of these goals were enacted in 2009. So, you know, over 12 years ago. And I think it's important to note that we have not arrived, as the report notes, we have not arrived at these goals yet. For many purposes, we're still working on it. And I think this is a very important page in this report, and a reminder that these goals have existed in statute for some time. So to put a finer point on one of my concerns, it's around the meters that we have had for some time. It is noted that both in CMP and Versant's service territories that the meters are capable of measuring and monitoring bidirectional flow. So if I have a solar panel on my house, the times of the day or year when I'm producing, when I'm pushing energy onto the grid, that can be measured. That flow can be measured, and the time and the amount of energy, and likewise when I'm consuming, the time of day and the amount can be measured as well. So my question is, since that is the case, why is the commission allowing the utilities to put 2 meters on the house? I still don't understand why are we asking ratepayers to pay for 2 meters in CMP's service territory, at least for those homes that are moving us forward in that direction, where we all are hopefully producers as well as consumers in the future.
I don't believe that, and maybe Angela, you know, but I don't believe that's the case in the vast majority of behind the meter rooftop, that 2 meters are now required.
It is the case that in every home where in CMP service territory, at least, where there is a net metering arrangement, CMP is entitled to purchase and to receive a return on equity for the purchase of an additional meter. And that is standard across their service territory. It is required for homeowners. You don't have a choice as to whether you have 1 meter or 2. If you want to be a producer as well as a consumer, you have to have 2 meters. And yet, as your report demonstrates, these meters can do bidirectional flow. That just, I mean, even you know, meters in the 1980s could do bidirectional flow. So it's not especially remarkable that these meters can do it. And if anything, we should expect more of the meters. What I don't understand is why we're paying for more than we need to in our rates.
Yeah, I think we'll have to check on that. I know years ago it was necessary to have 2 meters. There may be reasons why customers want a separate meter to measure the output of their generation for purposes of maybe renewable energy credits or something along those lines. But we can get back to you because it's, and I know, Angela, maybe you have a better understanding, but.
No, my understanding, which may be incorrect based on what Chair Barry is saying, is that putting 2 meters on anymore, that the meters themselves had the ability to record both in separate from out, and that was what they were doing. So I think we should definitely get some, because that was not my understanding at all.
Thank you. I'll wait. To hear
Any
back.
follow-up, Representative Barry?
All set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple, but first of all, I'll touch on that last point of Representative Barry's. My understanding would have been also that when we in early, I believe it was 2018, did away with gross metering, that was one of the big reasons that the opponents of that suggested, and I believe Representative Barry probably mentioned it more than once, that they had to pay for 2 meters for that to occur. So I would think that from what your report states, that wouldn't be necessary any longer. So I'll be interested to hear the results of that also. With that in mind, from what your report says, I think there's an opportunity there to look at for this committee and the legislature. There's an opportunity there to revisit how do we look at folks who are net energy billing customers. How do we look at their responsibility to help pay for the delivery end of it for the power that they produce that goes out to the grid? That, as I remember, was the reason for the gross metering, and I certainly would be interested in looking at that in the future if we are now capable without that extra meter of measuring that. I believe, as I've stated in the past, that it would be incumbent upon those using the system to at least pay something for having that capability to sell the power that they produce to the system. So I'll just make that statement. I don't know if you wish to comment on that or not, or if maybe I'm wrong in that assumption.
Well, I'm not going to comment really on the substance of what you said, but I will note that in our grid modernization report that we're currently working on, I think you will find some information on sort of the considerations around those issues.
So in regards to the time of use, that's something that we've talked about a lot. I know Senator Vitelli and I were on energy storage group committee that looked at how can we, what are the methods that we might best look at for storing power. But one of the things that we were trying to address was peak energy loads, flattening the curve, if you will. And one of the easy low-hanging fruit items seem to be getting people to look at when they're using their power and adjusting accordingly. If, for instance, they are using power during peak load times when it's the most expensive, when we have to bring on extra assets or whatever, if they are aware of that. So this report seems to indicate that the current so-called smart meters that are either in existence or being put into existence by the utilities have that capability. My question is, I'm assuming that the PUC would have to set up a new, if you will, rate billing structure for that to occur. And or is that something that EUT would have to put legislation in to allow the PUC to do that? And I'm also assuming that that's not something that they would just, the utilities would just be able to start without prior approval as far as how they bill.
Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
It's important to recognize that the commission is currently, and certainly based on previous legislation, looking at all sorts of rate design changes, possible changes or implications based on current policies. So I think it's important to note that time of use rates are available for residential and small commercial customers. It's optional. It's not required. Bigger customer classes have essentially required time use rates and demand charges that are intended to do exactly what you're saying, Representative Foster, is to reflect the costs at the time of the usage. So we are quite engaged on proposals for various kinds of rate designs that would look at charging based on the costs at the time. In fact, we, as Phil and Harry mentioned, we have several reports, one of which is coming at the end of February on rate design having to do with charging stations. So it's not so much that that this is not something that's happening. It's been that way for a long time. It's a question of what the time period should be, how they should be set, whether demand charges, would be based on coincident demand, non-coincident demand, all kinds of complicated questions on rate design that we're looking at. But yeah, surely the issue of having rates mirror the cost at the time of usage is something that the commission has always been engaged in. I don't think we need legislation on that. I don't know, Angela, if you have anything to add.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that this committee has already directed us to look at a number of these rate designs. And as Mitch said, we are heavily embroiled right now in doing that. And there's a lot of considerations of, pros and cons of various approaches, various types of end uses, such as electric vehicles, and maybe different electric vehicles might have different, profiles for their charging. There's a lot involved, and we've got a lot of dockets open currently to dig into those very issues, given that they are definitely critical, important issues now more than ever, even though it's always been an issue. It's just probably becoming a bigger issue now.
Representative Berry, or
if I could follow up.
Yes, a follow-up. I apologize, Representative Foster. I forgot whose question it was.
My hand signals are both the same for both, I guess. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's the supply. That's the generation supply side that we've talked about. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to Representative Berry brought up the point that, in my opinion, delivery would seem to stay somewhat level, if you will, delivery charge, unless there's added costs during peak hours for rerouting or things like that. So I'm wondering if you could just touch on that, because currently that delivery charge is a per kilowatt hour rate amount of usage, and pretty much
I was talking about T&D rates. So the distribution system, the costs of running the distribution system do vary at different times, or at least the system has to be built to meet peak loads. And so T&D rates are, what I was talking about were T&D rates that do have demand charges and optional time of use rates for the smaller customers to try to give them the signals to use power off peak. So when the utility, which would minimize the utilities needs to expand because of usage on peak. And the supply side is by competitive providers, and they can offer customers time of use rates if they would like, if the customer would want to choose them. Sorry about that confusion.
Representative Foster, you want to follow up?
If I could, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tannenbaum, for clarifying that. And I certainly do understand that the utilities have to build to meet that peak load, which we would hope would be reduced. But also, when I look at my ISO New England app from time to time, I'm assuming that it would also affect supply in a larger percentage of my bill, if you will. If I run my dryer when there's a peak load, and therefore the ISO New England rate is at $82 versus 22, that will be what is reflected most in my bill if I'm able to change my habits. Is that not correct? Thank you.
So again, the supply side is by competitive providers, and again, with larger customers, they often do have their supply rates are time differentiated in order to save money for the larger customers who can, move their demand around. With the smaller customers, my understanding is there traditionally has not been a lot of interest in customers choosing an option of time of use rates. That could change in the future. I suspect in the past, most customers just don't want to worry about it. So they pay a flat rate and they could wash their clothes whenever they want. In the future, with heat pumps and electric vehicle charging and that sort of thing, customers, smaller residential customers, smaller commercial customers might really then have the motivation to look into signing up for time of use rates for their supply. But again, for the smaller customers, my sense is there just isn't interest in it, so competitive suppliers aren't offering it, although I think some do offer it.
Yeah, I'd add to that. A number of years ago now, the commission actually procured a time of use standard offer, which was optional for customers. And there was very little uptake on that.
Yeah, virtually nobody.
Yeah, and it was, and the suppliers were not very happy about offering it. We were fortunate that we did get bids for it, but it wasn't something that they were clamoring to do. And I think, as Mitch said, we've not really seen much of it in the other CEPs either, which is probably because customers haven't seemed that interested. But as things change, it may change.
Good. Are you all set, Representative Foster? And I think it's a good point good time to just mention to committee members, there is an app called ISO to Go, which obviously Representative Foster has downloaded, and you all may want to do it. It gives you, it kind of looks like, see if I can see it. It kind of looks like this, and it allows you to see current rates on a timely fashion. Here, I'll hold it up again and see state by state, and you find it ISO to Go on your phone. You can download it, and Representative Foster was right. It's actually up to 87.85 now in Maine right now. And we are going to be having ISO New England come in and talk to us about, do a presentation in the committee. So if you haven't downloaded the app, I'd encourage you to do it. And we can actually ask them to explain exactly what these rates mean and how they affect customers in Maine, just for education purposes. Angela?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing that, I mean, we don't have a lot of visibility into how suppliers arrange, what they're going to use to provide power to customers. But I think that it's our expectation that, for example, when we do a standard offer procurement, that those standard offer providers go out and arrange for blocks of power to cover, at least I would assume, a good chunk of their obligation. So even though there may be, bumps in the hourly prices, it isn't necessarily true, I would assume, that those are directly translating into cost at that time to a supplier that is providing your power at that moment.
And I think these are good questions, technical questions for us to direct to ISO New England as we get a deeper understanding of this information. Representative Berry, you have a question?
I do, thank you. And first, just a couple of preliminary comments. I need to apologize. I have learned that more recently, in fact, the utilities have begun to just keep it to 1 meter. So you were absolutely correct, Angela and Mitch, on that point. I guess I just wasn't quite up on that that news. So that's great to hear that we're now just doing 1 meter, and I'm grateful that ratepayers will save that additional expense going forward. So thank you for that. And with respect to time of use rates and the importance of 15-minute increment measurement for both T&D and supply. I want to put a finer point on it, because I think that the questions that Representative Foster were asking were very important. And one thing that it's helpful, I think, for all of us to remember is that the grid is designed and built for the maximum flow, right? For the time of maximum demand on the system. And then there's some additional capacity built in just to be sure that you have a cushion as well. So it's that moment in the summer, when the hottest days of the year, the hottest few hours of the year, in fact, those hours when our air conditioners are on, that we're building the grid to. Or maybe it's that winter peak when everybody has their heat on, and of course with EVs and heat pumps, which do require a bit more in cold weather, that may be the peak that we're looking towards. We'll see where it goes. But those are the times, those few hours of winter, a few hours of summer, are the times that we build the whole grid to. And we pay for that grid, both the transmission and the distribution systems, in our rates, in our T&D costs. And it's the job of the commission to decide what the rate should be to compensate the utilities for that. So when I think about the future and about sending proper signals to consumers who may also be producers, I think about that. I think about the T&D opportunity and asking people to maybe not use that appliance, or not charge that EV, or not heat your hot water, whatever it is at that time when we are in peak demand, so that we can reduce the peaks, shave the peaks, and save money for the grid. So I'd love to see that being considered as part of time of use. Maybe it's only necessary at certain times, but I think that the other truth is that the more of a signal we can send on the T&D and the supply side of the bill, the better, right? And the more we can utilize aggregated demand response, things like hot water heaters, the better. So I feel that this area that we're exploring now, billing and metering, and the ability to reflect what's going on in real time, is critically important. And that's why I'm personally pressing for the most sophisticated ability to reflect that in our bills. So I'll just invite you to comment on those remarks.
I hear exactly what you're saying. I think generally speaking, you're right that there are certain hours of the year that are driving the cost. Now, it's important to remember too, that's a dynamic thing. It might have been, these hours in one year, and then there are different hours in another year. And it depends on the weather. It depends on a whole host of things. It also may be dynamic with respect to, it may not be the same across the whole system. There may be times that the whole system is stressed, and then there may be times that a particular portion of the system is stressed. So, it becomes more and more complicated the more and more in depth you go. But your premise, I think, is correct. That, in theory anyway, if you can send the right price signal to customers to shift their usage off from those whenever they are and wherever they are, those peak periods, it's benefit to everybody, really. It's important also to remember, though, that some of the usage is sort of easy to shift, and some of that usage may not be easy to shift. And we have to be cognizant of the customers that are behind that usage. If it's someone who really needs to run their appliance and they are a low income person, we want to make sure that we don't have a situation like Texas where they get a $10,000 bill for an hour of usage. So the premise is right. The devil is in the details of implementation, I think.
Representative Barry, any follow-up?
Mitch, anything from you on that? Or if not, I'll go to my next question.
No.
Okay, great. No, I think that's exactly right, Ms. Monroe. Thank you. So I look forward to continuing that dialogue. With respect to the portion of your report, and I'm looking now at page 7, towards the bottom. There's reference made, and I've seen this now in quite a few communications, public communications by the commission, including to the thousands of customers who had complained about their bills. A statement that troubles me, and I'm going to read it to you. The statement at the bottom of page 7 is: Liberty concluded that CMP systems were accurately metering customer usage, accurately transmitting the metered usage to the billing system, and accurately billing for that usage. The reason that troubles me, and I won't read the whole portion, but it's all positive, I'll say that, regarding the audit, is that I read the audit, and that is not I don't know how else to say it. It is not an accurate representation of what the audit said. There were parts of the audit that made observations similar to that, but I want to read you some portions of the audit and ask you to respond and explain to me why these portions are not referenced by the commission in describing that very important report. Regarding billing system errors, the Liberty audit said, and I quote, "More than 100,000 customer accounts have experienced billing error since SmartCare deployment. Many individual customer billing errors took months to resolve. A year after go live finds CMP still reporting customer affecting errors." That's page 97 of the report, unquote. Another quote, in the indefinite timeline on page 8 and page 28, the audit report described a major defect in over half of CMP's meters. It described that the defect could cause meter readings to double following an outage, and to continue at twice the correct level until the meter is reset, either manually or by a second outage. But the investigators found that management, quote, "should have," unquote, "addressed this issue 4 to 6 years prior, but instead placed the problem on an indefinite timeline." It went on to say that because the company had failed to act 4 to 6 years earlier, the auditors found, quote, "no reliable means exist to determine the number of customers affected," unquote, after the outages of 2017 or any other outage, or to compensate overbilled customers. In addition, there were issues regarding customer complaints, the severe mismanagement of the transition to the new billing system, the failure to properly test it, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of coding errors in the billing system, and that the work had been outsourced for customer service to an international firm with incredible turnover. Thousands of customer calls were never answered, and thousands of complaints were never addressed. I realize that customer service piece is not the subject of this report, but I do want to mention that. And finally, I'll just mention that the PUC is saying that everything's fine. CMP also said everything was fine. In fact, in April 2018, top management held a press conference to claim that they had found no systemic errors. And then a month later, internal documents were surfaced in the media saying that they'd known for months that the system was, quote, rife with problems. And, I could go on, but in reading the report, I just don't see a justification for the way that this is described here. Again, more than 100,000 customer accounts had experienced billing errors, and a year after go live, find CMP still reporting customer affecting errors. That's page 97 of the report. Why is the PUC representing the Liberty audit in such a one-sided way?
So just to stop you right there, Representative Berry, just to clarify, when you say page 8, page 28, you're referring to the actual Liberty audit report, not
that is
the
correct.
report we have in front of us.
That is correct. And yes, and
yep. So
very
all
important.
members should have a copy of that Liberty audit report in our files, just so
yes.
you know.
And
okay.
and I will be happy to allow Chair Bartlett to answer the question, because I see that he's interested in doing so.
Good. I think it's a very good question, and if we could have Chair Bartlett back over and just to answer that question. You able to up there?
He should be promoted. Yes.
Chair Bartlett, do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, yes, thank you. And I've just offered some additional thoughts, and I suspect that Angela and Mitch may have more technical expertise on this than I do. But I think it's important to understand that there's a distinction between two issues. One was whether the meters were accurately reporting usage and transmitting it into the billing system. And then the second was the set of software billing errors that were occurring independent of that. And I think that's where the confusion lies. The commission certainly never said that the CMP was not at fault or there were not significant problems. And we've never given short shrift to the fact that 100,000 customers were affected. We imposed significant penalties, audits, additional review, some of which we are still in the middle of, including that management audit that I referenced earlier. So I think, there were significant billing errors, but those were errors related to the new software was rolling out, not to the core metering system as it was feeding into the billing system. Liberty literally tracked every single record going into the system, followed it from the meter and through the billing system, and concluded that there was no fundamental problem. There was no systemic problem with that. What we were seeing were these defects in the software that were impacting what was appearing on customers' bills. And I think it's just, to me, it's critically important to understand that distinction because it's not, in my view, it's not fair to suggest that the meters weren't working or that the billing system was not working in its entirety. There were defects that caused significant problems. And we worked very hard to investigate that. It's probably the biggest, lengthiest investigation the commission has ever done. We ensured that every customer impacted by one of those billing defects was made whole. And then we imposed very significant penalties and reporting and auditing requirements on CMP. So I just want to make that clear, and I'm happy to defer to Angela and Mitch to answer any of the additional technical aspects of the question.
So just to clarify for a second, I think Representative Berry's question is on that sentence is the last part of it where it says, and CMP systems were accurately billing for that usage. And you're telling us that's not true, that they were not accurately billing for that usage?
What I'm saying is there were independent defects in the software that were causing errors on the bill. And that's the issue. It wasn't a case where 500 kilowatt hours was going in and then the customer was being billed for 3,000 kilowatt hours. That was not what was happening. there were defects that were certainly impacting people's bill, and those were all traced and customers have been refunded. But I think, and I don't have that report directly in front of me, but I think that that's a quote or very close to a quote straight from the Liberty report in terms of their audit of tracking what came from the meters through the billing system. In their view, that was accurately going through, and that the defects were separate, and there was not a systematic flaw. And I think systematic is the key. There was not some systematic flaw in how that was being done, or systematic errors resulting in the bills. There were defects that had specific impacts on customers, no question. But I think that's the distinction. It's not a simple one, and probably we can get computer experts with a lot more expertise than I do who could help to parse that out. But it really, to me, has come down to the biggest distinction is whether there was a systemic problem, because that was the core question. Was there a systemic failure that was causing inaccurate usage? And the conclusion was there was not. There were these isolated defects that could be traced back and are being remedied, but that's a different question than whether there was a systematic flaw in how information was flowing from the meter through the bill.
Okay, I just ask you, Phil, if you see what Representative Berry is getting at, is that is a very confusing statement in your report as far as representing what Liberty concluded.
Yeah, I understand, and we will certainly do our utmost to provide more nuance in the future.
Okay. Representative Berry, did you have any follow-up?
Yes, I think, the commission has certainly been overloaded by a number of complaints that it received. I know am I muted?
Not anymore.
You're just cutting in and out, Seth.
Thank you. It may be my connection, Jason, so bear with me. I'm puzzled at the repeated assurance that the finding was that the systems worked well. And when having read the Liberty audit report, and even in light of the commission's actions, I think it's quite clear that there are two sides to that coin, and that there were hundreds of thousands of errors, dozens of coding errors. To me, that's if I code my computer system poorly, in dozens of different instances, that becomes a systemic problem. And so I think to some extent we're debating whether is it a systemic problem or is it not a systemic problem. That the bottom line here is that the utility made massive mistakes, violated the trust of the public. They are a public utility. It was incumbent on them to do a better job, and they failed to do it. I don't think we should sugarcoat that. And I'm just wondering why it is. I mean, is the commission looking to instill confidence in the utility because it makes the job of the utility easier? Is there something? What is it? I understand that we all need to trust our utility, but I think that trust needs to be earned. And so I'm just asking, why not make it plain? Why not in every time that these issues come up, be clear about what went well and what did not go well?
And in talking about that, I mean, if you want an updated report of the billing and metering investigation, we can dust that off, the old report, and provide that. But I think the question going forward is not whether there were problems that have been fixed. The question is a billing and metering system, my understanding of the question is whether the billing and metering system is working and is going to work going forward. And the answer to that question is yes. And as much as we dislike the rollout of the new software and CMP's, and especially this customer service response to it, which was a complete failure, I think we've emphasized that over and over again, that it wasn't just that there was a problem with the software, but it was the customer service side that really sunk the ship, that really destroyed confidence. But I do think CMP customers can be confident that going forward, that the when they are using electricity, that is being metered and billed through the system properly. And I think that is I think that's the fundamental point, that if we're looking at where do we go from here, we can be confident based on the analysis that was done, that that billing and metering system is going to work going forward and is working effectively. And I think that's the point. That was really the only point in the statement. We were certainly not intending to reopen old wounds around the billing and metering case. We certainly share your frustration with CMP. And I think we have spoke very, very loudly through our orders and through public comments during that time period about just how abysmal both the rollout and the customer service response to it was.
Then Barry, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, I would just add, I think what Chairman Bartlett is trying to say is the report was based on the rollout in 2017. What we're seeing now with the billing and metering, CMP's billing and metering, is that, complaints have been way down. We have continued reports by the utilities regarding customer facing issues, which have shown improvement. So yes, we're not trying to sugarcoat what, as Chairman Bartlett said, what happened when they rolled out their system, but it should also be recognized that due, I think, to the Commission's very strong response to their problems, that they have made significant efforts, and that currently we are not seeing anything like that in terms of problems with the billing and metering system, which I think is a good thing. It shows that the regulatory process can work. And by coming down so hard on CMP on this matter, at least for now, it looks like they've turned things around. And we have, again, SQIs, as you know, to monitor and to follow and to make sure that they continue and that the service doesn't degrade. Hope that's helpful.
Okay. And if you could just clarify again, we use a lot of acronyms here, what an SQI is.
Service quality indicator. That was discussed earlier in the earlier report, that one way and common for commissions to monitor the service quality of utilities is through service quality indicators, where they have to keep information and report it to us on things like how long does it take them to answer calls, how many calls do they miss, Katie and Safety, which I'm sure Phil can talk more about, because I get those confused.
Okay.
But that's what they are. They're indicators of service quality that we monitor. And we're actually looking at putting in penalties if utilities don't meet those.
Great.
And we have a proceeding open to do that.
Thank you very much, Mitch. Do you have any follow-up, Representative Barry?
I do, and I just want to say, this is important to me because of the importance of trust going forward. And I think that, we all earn that trust through the truthfulness of our statements. I don't find this portion of the report to be an accurate representation of what I read in the Liberty report. So I just want to be clear about that. And I think that the more that the public sees the full and true, the whole truth being told in our communications, the more we earn that trust, which will be important as we look to time of use, more sophisticated billing and metering systems in the future. And I know the Commission is working very hard on that, and I appreciate that work. As we look to building that confidence and increasing public confidence in our systems, I just want to quickly ask, the way that the Commission establishes that billing on the whole is done correctly in the aggregate. Can you speak to how the Commission trues up the sort of aggregate sales and aggregate billing. I assume that your people look at what is reported in terms of purchases for supply, what is reported in terms of sales, both to retail and wholesale customers, and you have some way of truing that up to make sure that someone's not, being shorted. And I just have one other quick question, and that'll be it for me.
Why don't you go ahead, Mitch or Phil, if you want to answer that?
I don't think I understood that question, Phil.
I was going to say Angela probably has more engagement in the analytical work that's done there.
Thanks.
I can take a stab at it. I think, it's complicated, obviously. Electrons go where they want to go. So there's, the physical nature of electricity. And then, of course, there's the financial nature of the way we settle our electricity markets. One thing that we all have to understand is that what is read at everybody's meter is not really reflective of the amount of generation needed to serve that customer due to losses. So there's, of course, always loss factors that have to be considered. And generally speaking, I think the suppliers pay pretty close attention to make sure that they don't think that they're getting short-shifted in estimations of losses. So I think if there were, and then there's the account, I believe they call it lost and unaccounted for energy. So there are, minor differences here and there that crop up. And the generators and the suppliers keep a pretty close eye, I think, on that to make sure that, they have a very vested interest in making sure that no one is getting ahead or behind where they should be. We at the commission, of course, look at on an annual basis, at least, to make sure that the RPS, for example, is being met appropriately by all of the suppliers. So we also have that check and balance to make sure that they're supplying the correct percentage of their load. And I think that to some degree, if there were discrepancies in the summation of all the loads of all the suppliers, we would probably see it there. And there may be other areas that I'm not really thinking of how we would do it. There's a whole settlement system, of course, that is done by ISO that keeps track to make sure that everybody's getting paid for what they're supposed to get paid for, and nobody is paying for something they shouldn't be paid for. So I think there are a lot of checks and balances, but a lot of it isn't probably our checks and balances.
So just to put a pin in that one, does the PUC itself look at sort of aggregated sales reported by utility and based on what it's billed customers for, and then true that up in some way?
I'm not sure would be my answer, whether that's part of some of our annual compliance reporting requirements or not, but we could get back on that question.
That would be great. And then my last question is relating to meters. Last I checked, if I have a complaint about my meter, and I think it may not be working properly, I report that to the utility. If I'm not satisfied, I can go to the PUC. But what happens is that the utility in question sends someone to check the meter, and they perform a reset and then check after that it's working properly. Is that still the system? And if so, do you see a future where a third party might be able to check my meter so I have a little more confidence in it?
That'd be a question for Derek in terms of how the meter testing is performed. We do require meter testing if the problem cannot be determined from a review of the billing records and so forth.
What about the third party part?
That's what I'm not sure. We can get back to. That's I just have to check with Derek on specifically how that meter test is performed.
Thank you. Last I checked, it was the utility in question that checks the meter.
Okay, any other questions on the billing and metering report for the PUC from the PUC? Melanie, I saw you had a hand up a while ago. Did you have a question or did it get answered?
No, it was more a comment. As a data analyst, I would say that 100,000 complaints within a certain period of time would indicate a systemic problem, even if it's an individual complaints coming in. And I do think that there was a bit of a gap in terms of when they went from the 2018, I'm looking at page 7, for example, on the report, on when those complaints were generated to the current metrics of 2021. If you went back to 2017 a little bit in your explanation, I certainly would have added that piece in. Thank you. That was it.
Right. Any other questions for the PUC on their billing and metering report? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for spending the time with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all.
Take care, Angela, Mitch.
Great to see you.
Bill. Okay, so for the committee, this concludes our work on the reports today. As you can see, we have a lot of technical, detailed information to go forward and go over, and there are going to be a lot of reports this session. So, Lindsay, if you could come back on.
Yes.
So great. So in the future, Representative Berry and I are scheduling a series of these reports. So just keep conscious, committee members, of what's coming up. And I'd like to work with Lindsay and Seth to see if there's a way we can get a link to these reports on the EUT website so that people can find them and see what we're discussing as we're discussing it. Any other business to go over from the 5 of us who are remaining? I want to thank you all for remaining. It's sometimes difficult to sit through all of these, but it's important information that comes out through all these questions. Good. We are on, is it next Tuesday, Lindsay?
That is correct. Next Tuesday.
And that's a confirmation hearing, correct?
Correct, 9 a.m. For the public advocate.
Okay. So and for people's information, our goal is to do the public advocate at that time, have the report go back to the Senate on the 26th, and then the public advocate has a report to present. We've delayed that. We wanted to get it till after the 76th. So if he is in fact is confirmed and approved by the Senate, then he can deliver that report on the 27th. Great. Well, thank you all for your patience, and we'll see you on Tuesday morning.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.